I stood in the center of the Yang family ancestral hall, feeling the cold weight of 1,000 years of history pressing down on me. My ancestors looked down from their tablets, but the living were far less respectful. Yang Fan has been a useless waste since birth, the second elder announced, his voice echoing through the hall without a hint of mercy. As of today, his title as Young Clan leader is officially revoked. A wave of snickering broke out among the core family members. I stood there, the only son of the current clan leader, Yang Kuan, being stripped of my birthright in front of everyone. I felt like a circus animal on display. The second elder wasn't finished. He looked at me with eyes like ice. Young Fan, if you still haven't reached a single level of cultivation in 3 months, you will be expelled from the Yang family forever. The mockery intensified. I was the first person in our family's history to ever be stripped of the Young Clan leader title. Our rules were absolute. If you reached your coming-of-age ceremony without cultivation, you were out. My ceremony was exactly 3 months away. If nothing changed, I'd be a beggar on the streets. I clenched my fists so hard my knuckles turned white. My face felt hot, flushed with a mix of shame and rage. For 10 years, since I was 6 years old, I had tried to cultivate. For 10 years, I had failed. And for 10 years, these people had laughed at me. I looked at my father. He sat on the high throne, his face a mask of grief and helplessness. Even as the clan leader, he couldn't break the ancestral laws to save me. Young Fan, you're a waste today, and you'll be a waste in 3 months, a voice barked out. It was Yang Kong, the Grand Elder's grandson. He was already an 8th level practitioner. In our world, the Blue Mist realm, martial arts were everything. You started as a practitioner and climbed through 10 stages, Master, Spirit, King, and beyond, each divided into 9 levels. At 17, Yang Kong was a genius. I was a 0. The Grand Elder, Yang Bo, stood up. He gave Yang Kong a half-hearted scolding before turning his cold gaze on me. In 3 months, if you are still useless, leave on your own. The Yang family does not feed dead weight. The room erupted in laughter again. I looked at their sneering faces and felt something snap inside me. Grand Elder, I said, my voice trembling but loud. I can't cultivate today. But how do you know I won't be able to in 3 months? Don't look down on a young man just because he's poor now. The tide turns every 30 years. The hall went silent for a heartbeat, and then they laughed even harder. It was a joke to them. My father couldn't take it anymore. He stood up, his regal robes flowing. He was a level 5 martial spirit, one of the 3 strongest men in Qingyun City, yet he looked exhausted. Fanner, leave. Go back to your room. I bowed my head and walked out, the sound of their ridicule following me like a shadow. As I walked away, I heard my father's roar of frustration echo from the hall. He had lost my mother years ago and had raised me alone. I knew I was his greatest disappointment, even if he never said it. Back in my room, I thought of the hope in my father's eyes. I punched the wall, my nails digging into my palms until blood leaked through my fingers. I didn't even feel the pain. My heart hurt far worse. Frustrated, I grabbed an old, rusty short sword from the corner. It was a sleeve sword I'd been given when I was 6. I had never used it. In a fit of rage, I swung it at the wall. The moment my bloody hand gripped the hilt, the rusty blade exploded with a blinding, multicolored light. I yelped and dropped it. As the sword hit the floor, a mist began to rise. A woman materialized, floating gracefully in the air. She wore a flowing dress that couldn't hide her breathtaking, curvaceous figure. Her face was exquisite, like a goddess who had stepped out of a painting, framed by long black hair. I broke into a cold sweat. My heart hammered against my ribs. This old piece of junk had been sitting in my room for 10 years, and there was a woman living inside it? She looked at me, her expression indifferent. Boy, she said, her voice like chiming bells. Do you want to become strong? Strong. That word had been my obsession for a decade. I didn't know who she was or if she was dangerous, but I swallowed my fear. Yes, Senior, can you really make me strong? The reason you can't cultivate is because of your unique constitution, she said calmly, and I happen to have the key to unlocking it. I immediately dropped to my knees and bowed. Please, Senior, teach me. A tiny, almost invisible smirk played on her lips before vanishing. This method is different from anything in this world. It requires a natural sword body. Without it, you'll achieve nothing. And such a body is 1 in a billion. My heart sank. My lips turned blue with anxiety. Do I have it? She watched me tremble for a moment, then nodded. You are the rarest natural sword body in existence. I froze. Then, a surge of adrenaline hit me. Is that true? You're not joking. Her eyes turned cold. Why would I waste my time lying to a nobody like you? Do you want to learn or not? I'll learn, I shouted. I'll even take you as my master. 10 years of being a waste had burned away my pride. In this world, strength was the only thing that mattered. If she could give me that, I'd do anything. She frowned slightly. I will teach you, but I will not be your master. You'll understand why later. It didn't matter to me, master or not. As long as I could finally fight back, I was ready. The mysterious woman reached out, her fingers pale and slender like white jade. She tapped my forehead lightly. Suddenly, a massive flood of information rushed into my brain. Star Sword Scripture, I muttered, my mind reeling. I looked at her, confused. Senior, if I use this technique, will I finally be able to absorb spiritual energy? For 10 years, I had tried everything. Every attempt to cultivate had ended in failure because my body simply wouldn't take in the energy of the world. The woman's expression remained cold and indifferent. Try it and see for yourself, she said. Her icy tone shut down any other questions I had. I sat down cross-legged on the floor and began to circulate the Star Sword Scripture. As the technique took hold, a powerful surge of energy began to flow into my body. It didn't dissipate like before. Instead, it rushed toward my dantian, gathering there with incredible speed. Within moments, I felt a sharp, swelling pain in my lower abdomen. Then, the energy turned warm, flooding my limbs. A loud boom echoed inside my chest. I opened my eyes, and tears immediately began to stream down my face. I couldn't stop them. 10 years of being called a waste, 10 years of humiliation, and I had achieved a breakthrough in a single breath. The woman frowned at me, her eyes filled with slight disgust. A man, weeping like a child? Have you no dignity? I wiped my eyes quickly, my voice trembling with gratitude. Young Fan thanks the senior for this divine gift. The Star Sword Scripture is a technique that exists beyond the laws of this world, she explained. Your body cannot absorb worldly spiritual energy, but this scripture draws from the power of the stars themselves. I blinked, stunned. It doesn't use spiritual energy? Then how do I grow stronger? What exactly is star power? Everyone knew that cultivators relied on the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. What she was describing went against everything I had ever learned. Star power is the energy from the celestial bodies in the vast universe, she said calmly. That is what you just absorbed. It made sense now. The energy felt far more potent than anything I had ever sensed before. Beyond star power, you have another unique path, she continued. Because you possess the natural sword body, you are immune to sword attacks. More importantly, you can swallow the energy within swords and make it your own. I froze. My mind went blank. How could such a heaven-defying constitution and technique even exist? The woman looked at me for a moment, her gaze drifting as if she were lost in a distant memory. Then she snapped back to the present. You have already broken through to become a rank 1 martial artist. Now, you must devour this rusted sword. It is currently sealed. If it weren't, a weakling like you would be torn apart trying to consume it. She tossed the rusted sword at my feet. I picked it up, feeling its weight. Senior, how do I devour a sword? Your sword body is active, she said. Just stab it into your body. You will absorb it naturally. My eyes nearly popped out of my head. Stab myself? Isn't that just suicide? Her face darkened. She didn't feel like arguing. With a flick of her finger, she manipulated the air, and the rusted sword flew up, lunging straight for my chest. Wait! Senior, mercy! I screamed. It was too late. The blade sank into my flesh and vanished completely. Instead of blood and death, a series of explosions erupted inside my body. Boom, boom, boom. Rank 2 martial artist. Rank 3. Rank 4. When the chaos finally settled, I stood there like a statue, completely shell-shocked. The sword was gone, swallowed by my body, and I had jumped 3 cultivation levels in seconds. Cowardice will get you nowhere, the woman said, her voice like frost. I felt a flush of shame. To be fair, stabbing yourself with a sword isn't exactly a normal Tuesday for anyone with a working brain. If I hadn't experienced it myself, I would have thought it was a death wish. Young master, it's time for breakfast. A voice called out from behind my door. I hadn't even noticed that the night had passed. In one single night, I had gone from a useless waste to a rank 4 martial artist. If the world found out, they'd lose their minds. I opened the door, and a servant walked in with a tray of food. My stomach growled fiercely from the night's exertion, and I immediately began to shovel the food into my mouth. The servant watched me, a look of pure disdain on his face. He muttered under his breath, "Still just a pig-like waste, I see." The words had barely left his mouth when I lunged. My fist connected with his chest, sending him flying through the air and crashing into the courtyard. I stood over him, my expression dark. "Do you forget who you're talking to? If you ever chirp at me again, I'll kill you." Ever since I lost my ability to cultivate at age 6, the entire Yang family had shown their ugliest faces to me. Even the servants treated me like garbage. Now that my title as the Yang clan leader had been stripped, they didn't even try to hide their contempt. But those days were over. I wasn't going to let anyone spit on me anymore. The servant scrambled to his feet and fled in terror. I looked at my fist, a grin spreading across my face. The feeling of power was intoxicating. For 10 years, I had held my breath. Now, I could finally breathe. The woman appeared beside me again. "Do you think you're impressive now?" I gave her an embarrassed smile. Then, a thought struck me. "Senior, why were you inside that rusted sword?" "You'll find out when you're ready," she said, cutting me off. "I have a sword technique. Do you want to learn it?" A sword technique? A true sword cultivator's skill? There wasn't a single sword cultivator in all of Qingyun City, let alone a technique. "Yes," I shouted. She tapped my forehead again. A flash of light entered my mind, revealing a technique called One Sword Invincible. It had 3 stages. One sword to sunder life and death, one sword to sunder mountains and rivers, and a final, terrifying stage, one sword to sunder the stars. I opened my eyes, a sharp, metallic glint flashing in my pupils. "This isn't just a technique," she said. "It is a conviction. With your current level, you can barely begin to practice the first stage." I didn't care about the difficulty. I was going to be the first sword cultivator in the history of this city. I rushed into the courtyard and began to train. The first stage required a belief that one strike could decide life and death. To master it, I needed an invincible will. And after 10 years in the dirt, my will was the only thing I had left. I had endured enough eye rolls and mockery to last a lifetime. My heart burned with a single, desperate desire: power. I wanted to crush my enemies. I wanted to kill anyone who looked down on me. Thinking back to every insult the Yang family had thrown my way, a cold resentment bubbled up in my chest. I didn't care about being world invincible. I just wanted to make sure no one ever dared to treat me like trash again. I held out my hand, and the sleeve sword appeared instantly. It felt like magic. I stepped toward a massive boulder in the courtyard and swung with everything I had. A massive explosion echoed through the air. The rock shattered into 1,000 pieces. I grinned, my heart racing. One strike to decide life and death. It was terrifyingly strong. I had actually done it. But the woman just looked at me with cold, unimpressed eyes. She told me the technique was about conviction, not brute force. To prove it, she picked up a fallen tree branch and lunged at another boulder. The branch didn't break. It sank deep into the stone, leaving the rest of the rock perfectly intact. I stared at it, speechless. How could a twig pierce solid stone? Then, she whispered one word: "Die." The entire boulder dissolved into gray ash before my eyes. My jaw hit the floor. She told me that for a sword cultivator, the sword is everything. It doesn't matter how strong the enemy is or what their cultivation level might be. If I want them to live, they live. If I want them to die, they die. That was the true meaning of the strike. I nodded, only half understanding, but I didn't stop. I practiced until my muscles screamed and the sun dipped below the horizon. I had been a loser for 10 years, and I wasn't going back to that life. A day passed in a blur of sweat and steel. I was deep in my training when a group of people suddenly stormed into my courtyard. Leading them was Yang Kong, the Great Elder's grandson. He had spent his whole life tormenting me. He was the reason I had been stripped of my status as the clan heir. His grandfather had pulled every string to ruin me just to put Yang Kong in my place. I looked at him, my eyes narrowing into slits. I asked him if he was in a hurry to die. He just laughed, calling me arrogant and threatening to beat me until I couldn't walk. I reached for my sword, but a sudden, invisible force sent him flying out of the yard. The woman appeared beside me. She asked if this trash had bullied me before. I told her the truth. He had beaten me since we were children. A terrifying killing intent erupted from her. She said she'd bully him back for me, then she vanished. A second later, a blood-curdling scream ripped through the air. I ran outside and froze. Yang Kong was pinned to the ground with a tree branch sticking straight out of his forehead. It was the same branch she had been holding. I felt a chill run down my spine. He was the Great Elder's only grandson. This was going to be war. The Great Elder, Yang Bo, arrived moments later, his face twisting in horror. When he saw the body, he literally spat out a mouthful of blood from the shock. He roared, demanding to know who killed his boy. The followers pointed trembling fingers at the woman. I knew there was no hiding it now. I stepped forward, taking a deep breath. I told him I was the one who did it. The Great Elder looked like a demon possessed. He screamed that neither of us would leave the courtyard alive. My father, Yang Kuan, rushed over to stop him, trying to find a way to mediate the situation. But the Great Elder was beyond reason. He lunged at the woman, throwing a punch packed with enough power to level a house. Without thinking, I jumped in front of her to take the hit. The woman actually smiled at me, a rare, soft expression. Then, a loud bang echoed. The Great Elder didn't hit me. He was sent flying backward, crashing into the dirt with a branch buried in his skull. A level 3 martial spirit, one of the strongest men in the city, had been killed by a piece of wood. The silence was deafening. My father asked who she was, his voice shaking. I told him she was my new master. The other elders were furious, screaming about revenge and clan laws. The woman didn't even look at them. She flicked her finger, and a flash of sword light pierced the second elder's head. He dropped dead before he could finish his sentence. The rest of the elders scrambled back, their faces pale with terror. They finally realized that this woman didn't care about their laws. And just like that, the Yang family was down to its last 2 elders. The 2 remaining elders stood frozen, unable to utter a single word. The mysterious woman turned her cold gaze toward the crowd of clan members. "Have you all been bullying Yang Fan all these years?" she asked. The silence was heavy. No one dared to breathe, let alone look her in the eye. They all lowered their heads in shame and terror. The woman's voice turned icy. "It seems you all played a part. In that case, you can all die." A sword materialized above their heads, descending slowly. An immense pressure slammed into the crowd, pinning every single person to the dirt. They coughed up mouthfuls of blood, their bones creaking under the weight. My father, Yang Kuan, panicked. "Yang Fan, stop her. If they die, the Yang family is finished." I looked at the woman and took a breath. "Senior, please show mercy. If the clan is destroyed, my father will have nothing left. He spent his whole life building this legacy." The woman looked at me with pure disdain. "This trash family? You actually care about this place?" I shook my head. I didn't care about the clan, but I cared about my father. I didn't want him to feel he had failed his ancestors. My father's eyes grew misty. He realized that I was the only one who truly understood him. The woman turned to my father. "So you're Yang Fan's father?" He bowed quickly, calling her senior, despite how young she looked. In this world, strength determined seniority. She frowned as she looked him over. "Why are you so weak?" I felt a bit embarrassed for him. In Qinyan City, my father was a legend. He was a level 5 martial spirit, one of the 3 strongest men in the region. But to this woman, he was nothing. My father coughed awkwardly. He explained that this was a small border town with thin spiritual energy and few resources. He blamed his own slow wits for only reaching level 5. The woman didn't change her expression. "Since you're his father, I'll give you a gift." She reached out and tapped his forehead with one finger. A terrifying wave of energy exploded from my father's body. Boom. Just like that, he broke through to level 6 martial spirit. My father stood there, completely stunned. He had spent years trying every pill and technique to advance, yet she did it with a single touch. The rest of the Yang family watched in disbelief. It looked as easy as child's play. She wasn't done. She told him she had left a cultivation inheritance in his mind. If he followed it, his future would be limitless. My father was so overwhelmed he tried to kneel in thanks. But no matter how hard he pushed, an invisible force kept him standing. "You don't need to do that," she said. "You raised Yang Fan for 16 years. This is your reward." The other elders looked at my father with burning envy. They wanted that kind of power, but they knew they didn't deserve it. I saw how easily she boosted him and got greedy. "Senior, can you give me a boost too?" I asked with a grin. Everyone looked at her, waiting for another miracle. She looked at me coldly. "You're dreaming." My face went blank. She explained that my father had years of foundation to build on. I had only been cultivating for 2 days. I needed to learn to walk before I could fly. My father turned to me, his eyes wide. "Yang Fan, you can cultivate again?" I nodded. "I'm already a level 4 martial disciple." He beamed with pride. The worry that had haunted him for years finally vanished. The third elder immediately tried to suck up to me. "The young patriarch is a genius. The heavens have blessed our Yang family." The woman sneered. "The heavens are nothing." The atmosphere changed instantly. The sky above the world turned pitch black. Thunder rolled and lightning flashed as a pair of massive, terrifying eyes opened in the clouds. It was the eye of heavenly Tao. It stared down at us with absolute contempt. The Yang family members began to shake. They were terrified. They blamed the woman for her arrogance. Even my father sighed, thinking we were all about to be wiped out for her blasphemy. The woman looked up at the sky. "Trash. You think you can scare me? Die." She flicked her hand, and a streak of sword light shot into the clouds. With one strike, the massive eye shattered into pieces. The dark clouds vanished. The sun came out, and the sky returned to a peaceful blue. Everyone stood there in a trance. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they would never have believed it. She looked at the lingering crowd. "Are you still here? Are you waiting for dinner? Get out." They didn't need to be told twice. They scrambled away as fast as their legs could carry them, my father included. Nobody wanted to cross a woman who could kill the heavens. Once they were gone, she walked into my small courtyard. "Practice your sword skills," she said. "Don't be lazy. I'm going to rest. Don't disturb me." She turned into a flash of light and disappeared into my chest. I stood there, staring at my own reflection. She was living inside me now. I took a deep breath, picked up my sword, and started to train. After seeing what she could do, I finally understood what a true sword cultivator was capable of. Even the eye of heavenly Tao, the literal will of the azure world, couldn't withstand a single strike from that mysterious woman. If I could reach that level of power, who in this world would ever dare to bully me again? The thought sent a surge of excitement through my veins. For the next 3 months, I became obsessed. I skipped meals and lost sleep, dedicating every waking moment to mastering the one sword to decide life and death. One afternoon, my father, Yang Kuan, walked into my courtyard with a wide smile on his face. I wiped the sweat from my brow and looked at him, confused. I asked if something was wrong. He nodded, his expression turning serious yet hopeful. He told me that since I had regained my talent for cultivation, it was time to fulfill an old promise. I had no idea what he was talking about. Then, he dropped a bombshell. He told me I had a fiancée. Apparently, my grandfather had arranged a marriage for me before I was even born. My father had kept it a secret all these years because I was a useless cultivator, and he didn't want to burden me. But now that things had changed, we had to pay them a visit. My mind went completely blank. A marriage contract? I asked him how he planned to handle this, especially since the girl was from the Nangong family in the southern region. My heart skipped a beat. The Nangong family was one of the 4 great clans. They were legends. If the Yang family could actually link up with them, our status would skyrocket. My father pulled out an old marriage contract. I looked down and saw the name written next to mine, Nangong Shui. He explained that she was the daughter of the clan leader, Nangong Jintian. Not only was she beautiful, but she was also a genius. She had already been recruited by the Qingyun sect, the most powerful sect in the entire southern region. Their sect master was a level 6 martial emperor, a man with almost no rivals. Being a disciple there meant you could walk anywhere with your head held high. I let out a bitter laugh. My wife was a goddess among mortals, while I had been the town joke for a decade. The gap between us was a mountain range. My grandfather was dead, and all we had was a dusty piece of paper. Would a girl like that really honor a contract to marry a guy from a small-town family? My father saw the doubt in my eyes. He patted my shoulder and told me not to worry. Whether the marriage happened or not didn't matter. What mattered was giving the situation a proper ending for the sake of my grandfather's memory. I felt a weight lift off my chest. I agreed to go. The next morning, we set off. We each rode a spirit beast, galloping down the wide main road. Even on these fast creatures, my father said it would take half a day to reach Garant City. This was the first time I'd ever ridden a spirit beast, a luxury usually reserved for big families who couldn't fly yet. When we finally arrived at Garant City, I was blown away. It was the most prosperous place in the southern region, home to the 4 great families and the Qingyun sect itself. The streets were filled with things I'd never seen in my small town, though the prices made my wallet ache. My father promised we'd explore the city properly once our business was done. We eventually reached the Nangong estate. Calling it a house was an insult. It was a massive, luxurious palace. A giant plaque hung over the entrance with the words Nangong family, carved in bold, flowing gold letters. But before we could even get close to the door, a guard stepped forward. He glared at us and told us to get lost. My blood boiled. I clenched my fists, ready to snap, but my father grabbed my arm. He whispered for me to stay quiet, warning me that the guard was a level 6 martial practitioner. I froze. A mere gatekeeper was stronger than most of the elders in my hometown. The gap in power was staggering. My father stepped forward, bowing politely. He introduced us as the Yang family from Qingyun City and asked to see clan leader Nangong. The guard looked us up and down with total contempt. He asked if we had an appointment. When my father said no, the guard sneered, asking if we thought his master just met with any random stray dogs off the street. I saw my father's face pale with insult, but he swallowed his pride. He knew we couldn't win a fight here. He reached into his sleeve, pulled out a storage ring, and pressed it into the guard's hand. He asked him to just pass the message along, promising we'd leave if the leader refused to see us. The guard peeked at the bribe, and suddenly, the sneer turned into a wide, greedy smile. He told us to wait and disappeared inside. The guard scrambled inside the mansion. A few moments later, I heard the sound of hurried footsteps echoing through the halls. A middle-aged man dressed in luxurious silk robes stepped out. He carried himself with an imposing aura, his eyes sharp and bright. This was Nangong Jintian, the current head of the Nangong family. When the guard saw his master personally coming out to greet us, he broke into a cold sweat. He clearly hadn't expected 2 people who looked like nobodies to have such a connection. In Garant City, very few people were important enough for Nangong Jintian to greet them at the door. Nangong Jintian smiled warmly. He called my father Brother Yang and remarked that it had been far too long. My father smiled back, though he looked a bit more reserved. He noted it had been 16 years since they last met and expressed surprise that the great clan leader still remembered him. Jintian laughed it off, telling my father not to use such formal titles, or his own father would scold him. They settled on calling each other brother, and Jintian led us inside. As we walked, I felt Jintian's gaze shift toward me for a brief second. Once we reached the main hall, the 2 men took their seats. Jintian informed us that he had already sent word to his father, the old master, who would arrive shortly. My father apologized for disturbing the old man's cultivation, then nudged me. He told me to greet my uncle Nangong. I stepped forward and bowed politely. Jintian smiled at me, but as his eyes swept over me, I saw a flicker of something in his expression. I knew exactly what he was sensing. At 16 years old, I was only a level 4 martial practitioner. To a man like him, the rumors were true. I was a natural-born waste. Even though I had made progress recently, reaching level 4 in 3 months was nothing compared to the geniuses of the city. To Jintian, I was a failure who would never amount to anything. Suddenly, a powerful presence filled the room. An elderly man walked in from the back of the hall. The invisible pressure he radiated was suffocating, making my heart race. This was Nangong Zhong, the former head of the family and a level 7 martial king. He was a legendary figure in the southern region. My father stood up immediately, bowing low to show his respect. I followed his lead, greeting him as Grandfather Nangong. The old man stroked his white beard and looked me up and down. He smiled and told me I looked like a young hero with an extraordinary temperament. I had to hold back a snort. What a hypocrite. I had been a loser for 10 years, and I was barely a level 4 practitioner now. Calling me extraordinary was just polite lies. This old man was definitely a sly fox. Nangong Zheng turned to his son and asked if he had called Shuer back yet. Jintian realized he had forgotten in the rush and quickly pulled out a communication jade. These were rare tools used by cultivators to send messages across long distances. He spoke into the jade, telling his daughter that her grandfather wanted her home immediately. A moment later, a voice drifted back from the jade. It sounded like music, pure and ethereal. Just hearing her voice made me curious. I wondered if this Nangong Shui would actually honor a marriage contract to a man like me. Nangong Zheng sighed, looking at my father. He spoke about my grandfather, Yang Xiao, and how he still felt the loss of his old friend. My grandfather had once saved Nangong Zheng's life. When the topic of my grandfather's death came up, my father's expression darkened. He admitted he still hadn't found any clues about who had murdered him. Nangong Zheng promised that if we ever needed help, the Nangong family would stand by us. Right then, a loud beast cry echoed from the courtyard outside. A moment later, a figure walked into the hall. She wore a flowing white dress that made her look like a goddess who had descended from the heavens. Her skin was like snow, her features were perfect, and even though she was young, she carried herself with incredible grace. This was Nangong Shui. She didn't even look at us at first, heading straight for her grandfather. She told him she had hurried back as fast as she could, even borrowing a purple phoenix beast from her master to make the trip. Nangong Zheng patted her head affectionately, mentioning how much her master must adore her. The purple phoenix beast was a guardian creature of the Qingyan sect, not something just anyone could ride. Nangong Shui gave a playful smile and reminded him that she was the sect leader's personal disciple. My father's face went pale when he heard that. He hadn't realized her status was that high. Her master wasn't just anyone. It was Qing Ro, the current sect leader of the entire Qingyan sect. The gap between our worlds felt like it had just become an ocean. I sensed Nangong Shui's aura immediately, and it felt like a heavy weight pressing down on my chest. She was already a level 7 martial artist. Standing there, I felt a sharp pang of irony. Compared to her, I really was nothing. Nangong Zheng looked at his granddaughter and gestured toward us. He told her to greet my father, explaining that this was Yang Kuan, and I was Yang Fan, the man she was destined to marry. Her eyes snapped to mine. She looked me up and down, her gaze cold and analytical. She had known about this arranged marriage for years, but she had never taken it seriously until I actually showed up at her door. After a few seconds of silence, she frowned. She asked me how I could possibly only be a level 4 martial artist. I kept my expression flat. I told her I was slow and that reaching level 4 was already a miracle for someone like me. I didn't want anyone to know the truth about my cultivation. In a place like Qingyan City, being a sword cultivator was unheard of. Revealing my secret would only bring a death sentence to me and my family. Nangong Zheng and his son, Nangong Jintian, looked at me with surprise. They could see I was calm. Most young men would be shaking or blushing with shame after being questioned like that, but I didn't blink. I could tell they thought my mental discipline was unusual. Nangong Zheng barked at his granddaughter to be polite and apologized to my father. But she didn't back down. She looked at him with pure arrogance and asked if he really expected her to marry a piece of trash. The entire hall went silent. The insult hung in the air like a physical blow. Nangong Zheng slammed his hand down and stood up, his face red with fury. He screamed at her to apologize. Even her father looked pale, knowing how much Nangong Zheng valued his word and his old friendship with my grandfather. Nangong Shui's eyes turned red with tears of frustration. She looked at her father and grandfather, feeling betrayed that they were taking my side. She screamed that she wouldn't do it. She told them that whoever made the promise should be the one to marry me. Then, she bolted out of the hall. A moment later, a high-pitched cry echoed through the air as she and her purple phoenix beast vanished into the sky. Nangong Zheng was so angry he smashed a nearby table into splinters. He shouted that if she didn't accept this marriage, She was no longer welcome in the Nangong family. Then he stormed out, leaving his son to clean up the mess. Nangong Jintian gave us a helpless, bitter smile. He apologized to my father, saying his daughter had been spoiled since she was a child. My father didn't smile back. He told him it was fine and that today wasn't the right time to talk. We turned to leave. My father was a proud man. Even if the world thought I was useless, he wouldn't let anyone insult his son to his face. He suppressed his anger, but his cold expression told the Nangong family exactly how he felt. We didn't stay in Garan City a second longer. We rode hard and fast back to the Yang family estate in Qingyan City. The silence on the way home was heavy. I realized then that without strength, you have nothing. It wasn't just about me anymore. I couldn't stand the thought of my father being humiliated because of my weakness. I stared toward the southern horizon where the Qingyun mountain range loomed. I needed to get stronger. I needed to master the one sword to settle life and death. And the only way to do that was through actual combat. The next morning, as the sun began to rise, I slipped out of the house. It took me a few hours to reach the edge of the mountains. The air there was thick with the metallic scent of blood. Groups of cultivators were gathered at the entrance, forming teams to hunt monsters for a living. A man from a group called the Flying Wolf Team approached me. He asked if I wanted to join them so they could head out immediately. I shook my head. I told him I was there to train on my own. A woman in his group scoffed loudly. She said a level 4 martial artist would just be a burden anyway. The rest of the team nodded in agreement. I didn't argue with her. I just turned and walked toward the dark tree line. If I stayed with the team, I wouldn't be testing my limits. I wouldn't be facing death. As I disappeared into the forest, I heard the woman mutter behind me that I was a dead man walking. I ignored her. The forest was dense, the massive trees blocking out the sun. The deeper I went, the thicker the mist became. Suddenly, a white shape blurred through the trees. I froze, my hand dropping to my weapon. A wolf-like creature with fur as white as snow lunged from the shadows. It was a level 1 snow wolf. My training had finally begun. I felt a wave of relief wash over me, followed quickly by a surge of excitement. Was this snow wolf a gift sent specifically to test my new skills? I didn't wait to find out. I gripped my hidden blade and lunged forward. The wolf pounced at the same time, its massive jaws snapping toward my throat. I twisted my body, barely dodging the strike. My fists clenched tight. I felt the star power within me explode, coating my knuckles in a cold, brilliant light. I threw a heavy punch directly into the wolf's face. There was a loud thud. The creature let out a pathetic howl and tumbled across the dirt. It scrambled back to its feet, snarling, and charged again. I shifted my stance and leaped into the air. My blade blurred through the mist, cutting the air with a sharp whistle. A wave of sword energy sliced into the wolf's flank. Blood sprayed across the snow-white fur. The beast shrieked in agony. "I'll finish this now," I shouted. I drove my sword straight toward its skull. The wolf tried to headbutt my blade in a final act of desperation. The impact sent a shockwave through my arms, knocking the wolf back 30 feet. I didn't give it a chance to recover. Before it could even shake its head clear, I closed the distance and drove my blade through its heart. The light faded from its eyes. I stood there, panting heavily. That was my first real fight since I started cultivating. My heart was hammering against my ribs. The mysterious woman appeared beside me, her expression unreadable. She asked me how it felt. Tense, I admitted, catching my breath. But exciting. I finally understand what a life-and-death battle means. One mistake, and I'd be dead. She nodded slowly. She told me I had gained some insight, but I was still too weak. She pointed out that I struggled against a beast of my own level. A true sword cultivator is supposed to be invincible among their peers. One sword should be enough to settle any fight. Her words set my blood on fire. Were sword cultivators really that terrifying? If so, why weren't there any in Garan City? I sat down and began to meditate. I guided the star power from the void into my body until my eyes glowed with light. After a long moment, I exhaled a cloud of murky air and stood up. I was recovered. Then, my stomach growled. I looked at the woman and gave her an embarrassed smile. I needed to eat. She glanced at the wolf carcass and told me the meat would be good for my physical body. I didn't hesitate. I used my blade to butcher the creature and started a small fire. The smell of roasting meat soon filled the clearing. I ate until I was full, letting out a satisfied burp. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the forest turned dark and hostile. The woman warned me to find shelter. The mountains were far more dangerous at night. I looked at the pitch-black sky and started running. The sounds of the forest changed. Deep roars and high-pitched shrieks echoed through the trees. My skin crawled. I searched desperately for a place to hide. Finally, I spotted a small cave tucked into a rocky slope. It was barely 5 square meters and filled with jagged stones, but it was better than the open woods. Just as I reached the entrance, a low growl vibrated behind me. I turned around and froze. A giant black wolf stood just a few yards away. It was massive, easily twice the size of the first one. My face went pale. It was a level 2 monster, the equivalent of a human martial master. I was only a level 4 martial artist. I was dead meat. The black wolf howled and lunged. My legs felt like lead. I wanted to scream at the unfairness of it all. But before the beast could reach me, the mysterious woman flicked her finger. A streak of sword light flashed through the dark. It pinned the giant wolf to the ground instantly. It didn't even have time to whimper. I stared at the dead monster, then at the woman. She had killed a level 2 beast like it was an annoying fly. She told me to stop staring and get some sleep. She vanished back into the sword in my chest. I spent the night in the cave, focusing entirely on my cultivation. When the first light of dawn touched the sky, I set out again. Meanwhile, far away at the Qingyun sect, Nangong Shui stood inside a grand hall. She looked at a beautiful, elegant woman with tears in her eyes. This was Qing Ro, the sect master. "Master, please," Nangong Shui pleaded. "I don't want to marry a loser. Can't you talk to my father and grandfather?" Qing Ro sighed and stroked the girl's hair. She told her it was a family matter and that breaking the contract would make her grandfather look like a liar. Nangong Shui shook her head defiantly. She told her master that she had investigated me. She knew I had been unable to cultivate for 10 years. Even if I had somehow reached level 4 recently, I was still trash in her eyes. She refused to be tied to a man like that. Nangong Shui looked at her master with desperate eyes. She argued that if I really was a loser, all the training and resources the sect had invested in her would be wasted on a worthless marriage. Qing Ro fell silent. She knew her disciple had incredible talent. If I, Yang Fan, truly was a waste of space, it would be a disaster for Nangong Shui's future. Qing Ro spoke softly, telling her not to worry just yet. She promised to send someone to investigate me. She said that if I was as bad as the rumors claimed, she would step in and settle the matter herself. Nangong Shui finally smiled. She chirped about how her master was the best, looking like a playful child again. Qing Ro just laughed and reminded her that she was already a level 7 martial master. She told her to keep pushing until she reached the martial forest realm. Nangong Shui promised she wouldn't let her master down and then left the hall. As soon as she was gone, Qing Ro's expression turned serious. She called for Elder Qing Yan. A disciple bowed and hurried to fetch him. A few moments later, the elder entered the hall. Qing Ro gave him a cold order. She told him to go to Qingyun City and find out everything about a 16-year-old named Yang Fan. She wanted every detail of my life from the day I was born. The elder was confused, but he didn't dare ask questions. He bowed and left. Before he was even out of the building, another disciple rushed in. Nangong Zhentian, the head of the Nangong family, was outside asking for an audience. Qing Ro sighed, feeling like the trouble was never-ending. She told the disciple to let him in. Nangong Zhentian entered and showed his respect. He sat down and got straight to the point. He knew his daughter was spoiled and asked Qing Ro to help convince her to go through with the marriage. But Qing Ro didn't give him the answer he wanted. She told him she had already sent people to check if I was a loser. If I was, she wouldn't let Nangong Shui marry me. If I wasn't, only then would she try to persuade her. Her voice carried a natural authority that made it hard to argue. Nangong Zhentian started to panic. He worried that breaking the promise would ruin his father's reputation and the family's honor. Qing Ro told him to relax. She said she would handle it when the time came, even if it meant paying a heavy price to settle the debt. Seeing how firm she was, Nangong Zhentian stopped talking. He knew his status was nothing compared to hers. Meanwhile, far away in the eastern region at the Lin family estate, a girl in a green dress stood before her father. Her name was Lin Qingzhu. She told him she wanted to go out and travel to find a breakthrough to the martial king realm. Her father, Lin Outyin, frowned. He wanted to send 2 elders to protect her, but she wasn't having it. She reminded him she was 17 and already a level 9 martial spirit. She was strong enough to protect herself. Plus, she possessed the martial god bloodline. Having that blood meant her ancestors were legends, and her cultivation speed was miles ahead of anyone else. Even a level 9 martial king would struggle to beat her if she went all out. Her father was still worried. She was the first person in 100 years to awaken that bloodline. She was the future of the entire Lin family. But Qingzhu argued that staying under his wing would only make her weak. She needed life-and-death battles to reach her peak. If she stayed sheltered, her will would fade. Finally, Lin Outyin gave in. He handed her a jade pendant containing a soul fragment of himself. He told her to crush it if she was ever in real danger. Qingzhu took the pendant and left. Her father watched her go, wondering if any man in the entire blue mist world was actually worthy of his daughter. Up in the sky, Qingzhu stood on a glowing lotus. She looked out over the eastern region and decided to head somewhere far away so her father couldn't spy on her. She looked at the jade pendant and realized it could be used to track her. With a smirk, she tossed the expensive treasure into a deep abyss. She checked herself one last time for any other tracking devices and then vanished into the horizon. A moment later, Lin Outyin appeared where she had just been, sighing because his daughter was too smart for her own cot. Back in the Qingyan Mountains, I was busy. After days of fighting monsters, my sword skills had improved massively. I had reached the level of a level 5 martial artist. The level 1 beasts that used to terrify me weren't such a big deal anymore. At dawn, the mysterious woman spoke to me again. It was time to move. I had been training my sword during the day and my cultivation at night. I looked at the rusty sword in my hand and asked her where it came from. She told me its name was Heaven and Earth. It was born in the deep reaches of the universe. She had found it for an old friend, but by the time she got it, that friend was already gone. I whispered the name to myself. Heaven and Earth. I didn't waste time feeling sentimental. I headed deeper into the forest, looking for a fight. I wasn't here to hide. I was here to grow. Soon, I heard the sound of a brutal struggle nearby. I crept through the tall grass and saw 2 massive beasts locked in combat. One was a giant yellow cat, like a leopard but much bigger, with claws that looked like daggers. The other was a black bear with a pointed nose and sharp spikes growing out of its back. They were fast and powerful. As soon as I got close, they both stopped and turned toward me. The black bear let out a roar that shook my chest and charged straight at me. I lunged to the side, barely dodging its massive weight, while the cat beast tensed its muscles to spring. The giant leopard was tensing its muscles, its eyes locked onto me like I was its next meal. I realized then that these 2 beasts weren't enemies anymore. They were teaming up to kill me. I didn't have the confidence to take them both at once, so I started to back away slowly. The leopard didn't let me leave. It moved like a blur, its eyes sharp and vicious as it lunged. I ducked, feeling the wind from its claws whistle over my head. I jumped into the air and swung the Heaven and Earth sword with everything I had. The leopard was fast. It dodged my blade and landed a heavy kick right in my stomach. The force sent me stumbling back. Before I could catch my breath, the black bear roared and charged straight for my face. I didn't panic. I gripped my sword and thrust it forward. The bear looked at me with pure contempt, as if a tiny human couldn't possibly hurt it. There was a massive bang. The bear was sent flying back, a bloody hole torn into its chest. I stared at my hands in shock. I didn't think I was that strong. The bear wasn't dead yet. The pain only made it more furious. It let out a deafening roar and charged again. I knew I had to end this fast. If I didn't kill one of them now, I wouldn't last much longer. I channeled every bit of spiritual energy in my body. The sword in my hand began to vibrate. As the bear reached me, I sidestepped its massive paw and drove the blade deep into its belly. I didn't just pull it out. I twisted the metal, tearing through its insides. The bear let out one final, agonizing scream before it collapsed, dead. I took a heavy breath, but the leopard was already on me. I was furious. I was tired of being treated like prey. I gathered my strength and leaped at the beast. It tried to swat me out of the air, but my sword sliced through its paw like it was paper. The leopard rolled on the ground, howling in pain. I didn't give it a second chance. I lunged forward and buried my sword in its side. I poured the rest of my energy into the blade. The sword hummed violently, and then a burst of sharp sword chi exploded inside the leopard's body. There was a loud blast, and the beast was blown to pieces. I stood there, gasping for air. If I couldn't even handle 2 level 1 beasts, I didn't deserve to call myself a sword cultivator. Suddenly, the sword in my hand let out a piercing ring. I felt something shift inside me. The mysterious woman spoke softly. She told me I had gained a sword heart. I asked her what that meant. She explained that by surviving that life-or-death struggle, I had found the foundation of the sword path. Cultivating the sword was really about cultivating the heart. Without a sword heart, I would never be a true master. I would just be a fraud. I had officially reached level 6 as a martial artist. I was exhausted, so I found a spot to sleep and didn't wake up until the next afternoon. The woman wasn't impressed. She told me I was pathetic for struggling so much against weak beasts. She said if anyone found out, I'd be an embarrassment to every sword cultivator who ever lived. Her words stung, but she was right. I needed to work harder. I collected the beast carcasses and put them in my storage ring. I needed spirit stones, the currency of the Kanglan world, to keep growing. I needed them to buy more swords to consume. For the next 2 months, I stayed in those mountains. I fought every single day until my body gave out. The fear was gone. I started to love the thrill of the hunt. My strength kept climbing, and soon, level 1 beasts were no longer a challenge. I could kill them with a single strike. I looked at the forest ahead and smiled. It was time to find something bigger. I asked the woman if I was ready for level 2 beasts. She agreed. I was a level 6 martial artist now, and I was ready for a real fight. A sudden, violent sound echoed from deep within the forest. It was the unmistakable clash of a high-level battle. I strained my eyes, looking toward the horizon, but I saw nothing but trees and mist. The mysterious woman in my chest laughed. She told me my strength was too low to see that far. I had been training in the Qingyun Mountains for 2 months now, and while the thrill of the hunt kept me going, the repetition was starting to wear me down. It was just killing, sleeping, and killing again. I told her I wanted to go see the fight. I was lonely and bored, and I wanted to see what real power looked like. To my surprise, she agreed. She said it was time I saw what a true genius looked like. I didn't understand what she meant, but she didn't explain. Instead, she pointed a finger, and the rusty sword inside my body suddenly flew out into her hand. I stared open-mouthed. I didn't know she could control the sword like that. She told me that at my speed, the fight would be over by the time I arrived. She placed the sword beneath my feet and made a gesture. The blade began to rise. Suddenly, we shot into the air like a streak of light, flying toward the heart of the mountains. It was my first time flying. I was terrified, my heart hammering against my ribs, but I was also exhilarated. The woman stood behind me, holding me steady so I wouldn't tumble to my death. In an instant, the sounds of battle became deafening. The sword slowed and hovered. I looked down and gasped. A young woman was locked in a brutal struggle with a massive, tiger-headed beast. She moved like a phantom, her dress fluttering as she leaped dozens of feet in a single bound. She looked to be about 16 or 17, with a face so beautiful it felt unreal. She wore a long green dress and held a silver spear, standing tall against the monster. She looked like a legendary hero. She pointed her spear at the beast and demanded it hand over something called the 9-star jade lotus. The creature, which the woman called the blazing flame tiger king, just laughed. It mocked her, calling her a mere level 9 martial spirit. My jaw dropped. I asked the woman in my chest if she was serious. A level 9 martial spirit at 17? The woman confirmed it. She told me the girl possessed a special bloodline and likely came from a powerful lineage. I swallowed hard. My father had spent his entire life cultivating just to reach level 5. Seeing this girl made me realize how small I really was. I was 16, but the gap between us was like the distance between heaven and earth. I gripped my fists tight. I couldn't let myself be left behind. The girl didn't waste any more words. Her eyes turned cold, and she charged. I could feel the pressure from the Tiger King even from this distance. It was at least a rank 3 beast, far stronger than the rank 2 wolves I had been fighting. The girl swung her spear, and a sharp burst of energy shot forward. The Tiger King roared, releasing a massive sound wave that collided with her attack. The explosion rocked the air, sending a cloud of dust and debris hundreds of feet into the sky. My throat went dry. The scale of this power was terrifying. The girl didn't back down. She lunged forward again, her spear glowing with a strange, flickering energy. The mysterious woman whispered that the girl had already mastered spear intent. I asked her what that meant. She explained that there are thousands of paths in cultivation. Just as a swordsman can master sword intent, a spear user can master spear intent. It was a level of mastery most people never touched in their lives. The battle turned into a blur of motion. The ground for 50 yards around them was leveled. Trees were turned to toothpicks. The Tiger King grew desperate and spat a massive ball of fire, trying to incinerate her. The temperature soared instantly. The girl just sneered. She called it a cheap trick and unleashed her strongest strike. A wave of freezing ice energy erupted from her spear, dousing the flames in a hiss of steam. Then, she spun. In one fluid motion, she hurled her spear at the tiger. The weapon moved so fast it seemed to distort the space around it. The Tiger King tried to swat it away with its massive paw, but the spear tore right through its flesh. The beast let out a pained howl as the spear buried itself in its body. It tried to turn and flee, but it was too late. It was too late. The silver spear buried itself deep into the red flame Tiger King's chest. Blood sprayed across the clearing, and the massive beast collapsed backward, hitting the ground with a bone-shaking thud. It lay there, motionless. I frowned, watching from the shadows. I couldn't believe it was over that easily. The girl in the green dress sneered, stepping toward the cave behind the fallen beast. She told the creature it had brought this on itself for refusing to cooperate. But the mysterious woman in my chest let out a long sigh. She whispered that the girl was still too young and naive. Just as the words left her lips, the Tiger King's eyes snapped open. It wasn't dead. The beast exhaled a thick, pink mist directly at the girl's back. She sensed the movement and spun around, but the gas hit her full force before she could react. As the mist settled, the Tiger King began to laugh, a deep, guttural sound that echoed through the trees. The girl's face turned a deep, burning red. She tried to circulate her spiritual energy to fight it off, but her legs grew weak. She looked at the beast with pure hatred, calling him a coward for using poison. The Tiger King just grinned. He called the gas tiger breath, a unique treasure of his species. I asked the mysterious woman what that meant. She told me it was nothing good. The red flame tiger was naturally lecherous, and this gas was a concentrated form of that primal, lustful energy. My heart skipped a beat. I realized exactly what the beast planned to do to her. Before I could say another word, the Tiger King roared in my direction. He demanded to know who was hiding there and told us to get out. The sound wave was massive, snapping ancient trees like they were dry twigs. The mysterious woman flicked her finger. A flash of sword light erupted, slicing through the sound wave and neutralizing it instantly. Suddenly, there was nothing left to hide me. I stood there, fully exposed to the beast's gaze. The girl in the green dress looked at me, her eyes desperate. She sent a telepathic message straight into my mind, begging me to take her away. She couldn't hold on much longer. Her body was trembling, and she looked terrified. I turned to the mysterious woman and told her we had to save the girl. She looked at the girl, then at me, and a strange, almost wicked smile played on her lips. She told me to go ahead and grab the girl while she held off the tiger. I felt like something was wrong, but I didn't have time to think. I lunged forward, scooping the girl up in my arms. The Tiger King roared in fury, calling me a dead man as he tried to pounce. But an invisible, crushing force pinned him to the spot. He looked up in terror as the mysterious woman told him not to ruin the moment. I didn't stick around to see his reaction. I held the girl tight, whispered an apology for the physical contact, and ran toward my companion. But she didn't follow. She told me to take the girl deep into the forest, and that she would find me later. I nodded and sprinted into the thicket, the girl's soft body heavy in my arms. Behind me, the mysterious woman smiled again and walked calmly into the Tiger King's cave. The beast kept screaming for her to get out, but she ignored him. Inside, she found what she was looking for, a 9-star jade lotus growing in a pool of water. She smiled, noting that this would be a huge help for my cultivation. With a wave of her sleeve, the lotus vanished. She reappeared above the Tiger King a moment later. She told him she wouldn't kill him today because he had actually done her a favor. The tiger looked completely confused, but she didn't explain. She just turned and vanished. Meanwhile, I was running through the woods as fast as my legs could carry me. The girl was huddled in my chest, her breath hot against my skin. Suddenly, she whispered for me to put her down. I stopped and set her on the grass, wiping sweat from my forehead. I started to ask if she was okay, but I didn't get the chance. With a sudden burst of strength, she lunged at me, pinning me to the ground. I was stunned. I tried to push her off, but she was like a mountain. Her face was flushed so red it looked like it might bleed, and her eyes were hazy and full of a wild, seductive energy. I shouted at her, asking what was wrong and trying to offer help. She didn't answer. Her body began to shake violently. She looked possessed. Before I could process what was happening, she started tearing at my clothes with frantic, desperate hands. I panicked. I tried to circulate my energy to push her away, but she was faster. She reached out and sealed my dantian, instantly turning me back into a powerless mortal. My clothes were ripped away in seconds. Then, her burning red lips crashed onto mine. My mind went completely blank. I felt like I was trapped in a fever dream, unable to move or think. As I lay there staring at the sky, the woman in the green dress suddenly waved her sleeve. A shimmering barrier of spiritual energy erupted around us, cutting us off from the rest of the world. I finally found my voice and screamed. I called her a rogue, a bandit, a woman who was forcing herself on me. But my words were cut short. The barrier held firm, and the forest went silent. A long time passed. When the energy shield finally dissolved, the woman stood over me. Her face was as cold as frost, and she had regained her composure, though a lingering flush still stained her cheeks. I, on the other hand, was a mess. I lay on the grass with my clothes torn to shreds, feeling like my soul had been sucked out of my body. I saw her hands clench into fists. A wave of murderous intent rolled off her, sharp and suffocating. I felt it, but I didn't flinch. I let out a cold laugh. I asked her if she was planning to kill me now to keep me quiet, especially after she seemed so captivated just a few moments ago. Her face twisted with rage. She snapped at me, telling me to never mention it again or she would end my life right there. I didn't care. I looked her in the eye and mocked her, pointing out that she had already made her move. She stared down at me, her mind clearly racing with 1,000 ways to kill me. But she didn't strike. Something had changed between us in those frantic moments, and she couldn't bring herself to do it. She turned her back on me, preparing to leave. I called out to her, my voice low and freezing. I told her that if she didn't kill me today, I would hunt her down to reclaim my dignity. She had taken me once, so I promised I would take her twice. She froze. In a blur of motion, she was back in front of me. She kicked me hard, sending me flying through the air. She stood over my crumpled body, radiating a terrifying, demonic aura. She looked like a goddess of death, beautiful yet lethal. I spat blood onto the grass and glared at her. I repeated my vow. As long as I lived, I would pay her back double for what she did to me. She let out a disdainful snort. She told me that even if I had 10 years, I wouldn't have the qualifications to stand before her. She wasn't exaggerating. Her cultivation and the power of the sect behind her were worlds away from a mere level 9 martial artist. Wait, level 9. I realized then that in that short time, I had miraculously jumped 3 minor realms. I was no longer a weakling. But I just sneered at her, mocking her for acting like a high and mighty immortal who didn't understand the world of men. My words clearly annoyed her. I challenged her to give me her name. I told her that if she was afraid of my revenge, she should just run away now. She laughed, though it was a mocking sound. She called my provocation childish, but she didn't hide. She told me her name was Lin Qingzhu. She said if I ever managed to leave the southern region, I might be able to find her. I memorized the name. Lin Qingzhu. I told her to wait for the day I found her. Suddenly, she lunged forward and grabbed me by the throat. She whispered that while she started this, I had gained unimaginable benefits. She pointed out my breakthrough and warned me to forget everything that happened. If I didn't, She warned that no one could save me, not even my family. She let go and waved her sleeve. A glowing lotus appeared beneath her feet. In the blink of an eye, she vanished into the sky as if she had never been there at all. I stared at the empty space she left behind. I smiled coldly to myself. One day, I would make her mine, and I would say it to her face. I closed my eyes and focused on my new power. It felt surreal. I muttered to myself, wondering if doing that was really a valid way to level up. Level 9 already? Are you starting to feel proud of yourself? The mysterious woman from my chest appeared beside me. I gave her a bitter smile. I told her this tiny bit of strength was nothing compared to that woman. Then, I asked the question burning in my mind. How did I break through 3 levels so fast? She chuckled. She explained that the girl possessed the bloodline of the 5 gods. By joining with her, I had been nourished by that divine energy. I nodded, finally understanding. Then, a horrifying thought hit me. I looked at her, wide-eyed, and asked if she had watched the whole thing. She laughed and shook her head. She told me she hadn't, but she could smell the trace of the god blood on me now. I let out a massive sigh of relief. If she had seen that, I don't think I could have ever looked her in the eye again. I looked up at the sky. I told her that since I was a level 9 martial artist now, it was time to go home. She agreed. She said my foundation was solid despite the speed of the breakthrough, and she promised to help me reach the next stage when the time was right. After a night of rest, I started the journey back. In just 3 months, my life had flipped upside down. I had entered the Qingyun Mountains as a level 4 weakling, and now I was leaving as a level 9 expert. In the entire Blue Mist world, this kind of speed was unheard of. I was no longer a piece of trash. I was a genius. My speed was incredible now. A journey that took a full day before now took me only half a day. Along the way, I ran into a Tier 1 spirit beast. I killed it with a single casual strike. For the first time, I felt the true thrill of power. I saw the exit of the mountains ahead and smiled. I was finally getting out of this place. But then, a woman's scream pierced the air. "Help me!" I turned to my left. A woman was running toward me, her face covered in tears and desperation. I frowned. I recognized her. She was a member of the Flying Wolf mercenary group, the same woman who had mocked me when I first arrived. She spotted me, and her eyes went wide with shock. She gasped, unable to believe I was still alive. I gave her a dry smile and asked if she was really that disappointed to see me breathing. She stammered, trying to explain that she was just surprised a level 4 like me survived. But then she stopped mid-sentence, her jaw dropping. She realized she couldn't even sense the limit of my power anymore. "Level 9, she stammered, her voice trembling. "How is that possible? 3 months ago, you were only at level 4. She stared at me like I was a monster. I just shook my head and gave her a thin smile. "People change," I said. "Weren't you in a hurry? Is everyone okay now?" She suddenly remembered her team. Her face went pale. "Please, can you save my companions? They're still fighting." I looked at her, leaning back slightly. "You looked down on me 3 months ago. Now you're begging me for a favor? Why should I care?" She looked at the ground, her face turning red with embarrassment. She probably never imagined the kid she mocked would become a level 9 expert in 90 days. If she had known, she would have treated me like royalty. I turned to walk away, done with the conversation. "Wait," she cried out, grabbing my arm. Her eyes were watering now. I was wrong. I shouldn't have been so arrogant. "Please, save them." I sighed. I've always been a bit of a softie for a girl in distress. "What happened to them?" I asked. She told me they had run into a Tier 2 spirit beast. That was the equivalent of a martial master level fighter. I rolled my eyes. "A Tier 2 beast? You want me to go on a suicide mission?" She shook her head frantically. Her team had already managed to wound the beast, but they were exhausted and dying. This was the best time to strike. I frowned, noticing something strange. "If it's wounded, why don't you kill it? And how can you see my level when I can't see yours?" She reached down and pulled a black ring off her finger. "It's this ring," she explained. "It hides my cultivation and lets me see through others." I took the ring and examined it. It was smooth, black, and felt cold to the touch. It wasn't a storage ring, but its effect was incredible. My heart raced. This was a tool I desperately needed. "Save my friends, and the ring is yours," she promised. I put the ring on my finger and nodded. "Lead the way." We ran through the brush until we reached a clearing. I stopped dead. It was a purple-eyed blood wolf. My blood ran cold for a second. When I first entered these mountains, a Tier 2 wolf almost ended me. But I wasn't that weakling anymore. I felt a surge of excitement. This was my first real test. Her 6 teammates were barely hanging on. They were covered in blood, and their spiritual energy was almost gone. The wolf was about to finish them off. "Stay back," I told the girl. "I took your payment. I won't let them die." I held out my hand, and the Heaven-Earth sword materialized instantly. Ever since I merged with it, the blade felt like a part of my body. I charged. The wolf was covered in deep gashes, just like she said. I swung my blade, sending a wave of sword chi screaming through the air. The wolf roared, swiping its massive claws to deflect my attack. I sneered at the beast. "What are you looking at? I'm the one who's going to kill you." I glanced at the mercenaries. "Get out of here. You're just in my way now." The captain tried to argue, but I shut him down. They were too injured to help. They retreated to the edge of the clearing, watching me with wide eyes. I turned back to the wolf and moved. I was so fast it looked like I was teleporting. We collided with a deafening crash. The impact sent the wolf skidding back several feet, but I didn't move an inch. I was stronger. I lunged again, my sword aimed at its throat. The wolf's eyes turned a deep, vicious red. It slammed its paw into the ground, summoning a cloud of bloody energy. "Just a death struggle," I muttered. I gripped my sword tighter. It was time to end this. I pushed off the ground, leaping high into the air. I swung my blade downward with everything I had, aiming straight for the purple underworld blood wolf. The beast looked up at me, a mocking glint in its eyes. It didn't even try to dodge. Instead, its body surged with a thick, bloody mist as it swiped a massive claw toward my chest. The collision sounded like a clap of thunder. The impact sent a shock wave through my arms, forcing me back several steps, but the wolf skidded back just as far. I wiped a bit of sweat from my brow and let out a cold laugh. "Let's see how long that blood energy of yours lasts against me." I didn't give it a second to breathe. I lunged again, my sword humming with power. This time, the strike landed with such force that the wolf stumbled back 2 full steps, its defense finally cracking. Behind me, the members of the Flying Wolf mercenary team were frozen in shock. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. The captain turned to the girl, "Xiaoya," his voice trembling. "Xiaoya, where did you find this kid?" "I ran into him as he was leaving the Qingyun Mountains," Xiaoya explained quickly. I begged him to help, and he finally agreed. The captain shook his head, his eyes glued to my movements. "But how is he this fast? How is he this strong?" Xiaoya bit her lip, looking just as confused. "I don't know. 3 months ago, he was only a level 4 martial artist. Now he's already at level 9. Level 9. The captain gasped. "That's impossible." They couldn't see my true cultivation level because I was stronger than them, and because I was wearing the black cry ring Xiaoya had given me. It masked my aura perfectly. The rest of the team shook their heads like rattles, refusing to believe it. Their captain was only a level 8, and the rest were level 6 or 7. They had spent years bleeding and sweating to reach their rank. To hear that I had jumped 5 levels in 3 months was a bitter pill to swallow. "He really is level 9, Xiaoya insisted. I saw it clearly before he put the ring on. My family's black cry ring doesn't lie. The realization hit them like a punch. They stared at me, wondering what kind of monster I was to achieve such growth in a single season. But they didn't have long to wonder. A massive explosion rocked the clearing. I stood over the carcass of the purple underworld blood wolf. It was dead. The doubt in their eyes vanished instantly. You don't kill a tier 2 beast unless you have the strength to back it up. Still, the captain muttered to himself, amazed that I had finished it so easily. I sheathed my sword and walked over to the group. "The wolf is dead," I said calmly. "My job here is done. I'll be taking my leave." Suddenly, one of the level 7 mercenaries pointed at my hand. "That's Xiaoya's black cry ring." The whole team looked down. I raised my hand, letting the dark metal catch the light. "So that's what it's called. The black cry ring." The captain turned to Xiaoya, his face darkening. "Xiaoya, why is your family heirloom in his hands?" Xiaoya turned pale, her teeth digging into her lower lip as she struggled to find the words. I didn't make her struggle for long. "The ring was the price for saving your lives," I said flatly. "A simple trade." The mercenaries went silent. They knew how valuable that ring was. The captain looked at me, his tone pleading. Little brother, that ring is incredibly important to her. Can you return it? We'll give you anything else in exchange. I didn't hesitate. I shook my head. No, this item is important to me now, too. I kept my word and saved you. The ring belongs to me. The captain started to argue, but Xiaoya stepped forward and cut him off. Brother Flying Wolf, stop. As long as you all are safe, the ring doesn't matter. Don't make things difficult for him. I looked at her, genuinely surprised. I had underestimated her. She had a remarkably open mind for someone who had just given away a treasure. Thank you for saving us, sir, Xiaoya said, bowing slightly. The Black Cry ring is officially yours. The rest of the team looked miserable, but they didn't dare cross her. I nodded at her. Fine. I know this ring isn't ordinary. As a bit of compensation, you can have the carcass of that Tier 2 wolf. Xiaoya's eyes went wide. A Tier 2 beast was worth a fortune compared to the Tier 1s they usually hunted. No, I can't take that. You killed it, it's yours. Enough talk. I interrupted, waving my hand dismissively. I said it's yours. I'm not the kind of guy who takes advantage of little girls. Before she could argue further, I turned and vanished into the trees. My footsteps were light as I blurred through the forest, leaving them behind. Xiaoya stood there for a long time, staring at the spot where I had disappeared, whispering my name to herself. The mercenaries gathered around the wolf carcass, their eyes burning with excitement. This single kill would change their lives. Xiaoya, the captain said hesitantly, this is yours. She shook her head. We're a team. Without you brothers protecting me, I wouldn't be alive today. What's mine is ours. As they cheered and packed up the prize, none of them realized that my image had been burned into Xiaoya's heart forever. By dusk, I reached the gates of Qingyan City. I looked like a traveler, dressed in white, covered in the dust of the road. My first stop was a general store to sell off the other materials I'd gathered. I was essentially broke, and after 3 months of eating dry rations and monster meat in the mountains, I was starving. I found a tavern and treated myself to the best meal they had. Only after I was full and satisfied did I begin the walk back to the Yang family estate. Standing before the massive front gates, I felt a strange sense of peace. The old Yang fan would have been anxious, his heart racing at the thought of facing his family's judgment. But now, my heart was as still as a mountain lake. I realized then that this was what it felt like to have power. It wasn't just about fighting. It was the quiet confidence of knowing exactly what I was capable of. I walked through the gates of the Yang estate with a swagger. I didn't care who saw me. As I passed through the courtyards, the clan members shrank back, their eyes filled with a mix of fear and lingering trauma. They were clearly still haunted by the memory of the mysterious woman living within me and the terror she had unleashed. I reached the entrance of my small courtyard, but a shadow blocked my path. I stopped and looked up. It was Yang Shui. She was the granddaughter of the Great Elder and the older sister of Yang Kong, the 2 men who had tried to destroy me. She was undeniably beautiful, with pale skin and a face so refined it looked carved from jade. Her figure was stunning, the kind that made men lose their train of thought, but her expression was cold enough to freeze blood. I've waited 3 months for you, she said, her voice dripping with ice. You finally showed up. I frowned. Weren't you at Garan Academy? When did you get back? A mocking sneer touched her lips. Did you think you could keep the truth from me forever just because I was away? You killed my grandfather and my brother. I'm here to settle that debt. Yang Shui, it's not what you think. I began, trying to explain the betrayal I had faced. I had no choice. I already know exactly what happened, she snapped, cutting me off. Even if they were in the wrong, you were the one who pulled the trigger. My brother is dead because of you. One day, I will have my revenge on that woman behind you. As soon as those words left her mouth, the mysterious woman appeared out of thin air right beside me. She looked at Yang Shui with utter disdain. Revenge? Do you really think you have the qualifications for that? With a casual flick of her finger, a beam of sword light shot toward Yang Shui. The power behind it was suffocating. Yang Shui froze, her eyes widening as she realized she couldn't even attempt to dodge. She squeezed her eyes shut, waiting for the end. Senior, stop. Don't kill her, I shouted. She has nothing to do with this. The sword light vanished instantly, inches from her throat. Yang Shui opened her eyes, trembling, but her pride remained. "Don't think I'll be grateful just because you saved me," she hissed. I couldn't help but grin. "I didn't save you for gratitude. I just didn't want to see a body as breathtaking as yours go to waste. I'm keeping you around just so I have something beautiful to look at." Yang Shue's face turned a deep shade of crimson. Her chest heaved with fury, her breath hitching as she glared at me. You shameless bastard." She turned on her heel and fled, her face burning with embarrassment. I watched her walk away and sighed. What a waste of a hot body. I wonder which lucky guy is going to end up with her. The mysterious woman let out a cold laugh. "Wasn't one girl in the Qingyun Mountains enough for you?" I felt a wave of awkwardness wash over me. I cursed silently. Did I sleep with her? She's the one who forced herself on me. The thought of Lin Qingzhu brought back a mix of love and hate. I loved the memory of that night, but I hated that she had used me and then just disappeared. One day, I told myself, I'd find her and give her a taste of her own medicine. "With your pathetic cultivation level, you sure talk big," the woman said, sensing my thoughts. "Stop wasting time and practice. Without strength, your words are just farts in the wind." I nodded with a wry smile. Just then, another figure approached quickly. It was my father, Yang Kuan. He looked relieved to see me after 3 months, but his expression changed when he saw the mysterious woman. He bowed deeply. "Greetings, senior." She gave a small nod and walked into my courtyard without a word. My father didn't mind her coldness. Powerful people were allowed to be eccentric. Then, he looked at me and frowned. "Xiaofan, haven't you been practicing? Why are you still at the 4th level?" He didn't know about my black name ring. I had used it to hide my true power. If people knew I had jumped to the 9th level of the martial artist realm in just 3 months, it would cause a riot. I didn't want to rush my progress. I lied. I spent the time stabilizing my foundation at the 4th level. My father nodded, but his face grew solemn. "Xiaofan, we have a problem. A distinguished guest is coming tomorrow. I don't know if it's a blessing or a curse." "Who is it?" I asked. "Elder Qin Yan from the Qingyun sect," he said, his voice heavy with worry. "He sent a formal notice saying he's visiting on behalf of sect leader Qing Ro." My eyes narrowed. "Nangang Shui. That's my guess too," my father sighed. "Why else would a powerhouse like the Qingyun sect visit our small family? I'm afraid they aren't coming with good intentions." I clenched my fists. It all came back to strength. If the Yang family were powerful enough, we wouldn't have to tremble every time a major sect knocked on our door. I thought being a 9th level martial artist was enough, but against a giant like the Qingyun sect, I was still nothing. A deep sense of powerlessness washed over me. I closed my eyes, a roar echoing in my mind. I need to be stronger. I don't care about being invincible. I just want to be so powerful that no one dares to look down on me ever again. As the thought took hold, the hidden sword within my body suddenly surged outward. Sharp, melodic hums of sword intent vibrated through the entire estate. The mysterious woman appeared by my side again, a small, satisfied smile playing on her lips. "The heart of a powerhouse," she whispered. When the air stilled, I opened my eyes. They were sharp, glowing with a faint, piercing light. My father stared at me, looking worried. "Are you okay? You seem different." I smiled, feeling a new sense of clarity. "I'm fine, father. Don't worry about the Qingyun sect. If things get out of hand, I'll ask Senior to step in." My father glanced at the mysterious woman, and for the first time in days, the tension left his shoulders. With her on our side, maybe we actually stood a chance. If a single arrow from my senior could destroy the eye of heavenly Tao, then the Qingyun sect was nothing in comparison. My father, Yang Kuan, left the room with a wide smile, finally feeling a sense of relief. As he walked away, the mysterious woman's voice echoed softly in my mind. She told me she hadn't expected me to develop the heart of a powerhouse so quickly. I asked her what that meant. She explained that it was a state of mind, a realm of absolute confidence. With it, I could overcome any obstacle and fear no one. It was the fuel that would drive my cultivation forward, regardless of how many enemies stood in my way. I stayed silent, letting her words sink in. The sun set, and night fell quickly over the estate. The next day, a servant's voice broke the silence in my courtyard. My father wanted me in the meeting hall immediately. I stood up, straightened my white robes, and pushed the door open. When I stepped into the hall, I saw a group of people dressed in matching uniforms. At the front stood Elder Qing Yin of the Qingyun sect. I scanned him quickly. Thanks to my black name ring, I could see his cultivation level even though it was higher than mine. My heart skipped a beat. He was a third-level martial grandmaster. Standing right beside him was Nangong Shui. She was as beautiful as ever, but the moment our eyes met, she glared at me with pure, unfiltered disgust. My father turned to the elder and introduced me as his son. Elder Qing Yin didn't even look at my father. He turned his cold gaze toward me and said he wouldn't waste time. He was there on the orders of sect leader Qing Ro to officially break the marriage contract with Nangong Shui. My father's fists tightened. He had seen this coming, but the disrespect still stung. I didn't wait for him to respond. I looked the elder right in the eye. I told him that the engagement was a pact made between my grandfather and Nangong Jintian. If they wanted to break it, Nangong Jintian should have come himself. I told the elder he was overestimating his importance. As far as I was concerned, he didn't have the status to even speak about this contract. The room went deathly silent. No one dared to breathe. My father looked like his heart was about to jump out of his chest. Elder Qing Yan's face turned a bruised shade of purple. A terrifying killing intent erupted from his body, chilling the air. He stepped toward me, his voice a low hiss, asking if I had the guts to say that again. I didn't back down. I gave him a cold smile and repeated myself. I told him straight to his face that he wasn't qualified. The elder snapped. He raised his right hand, and a violent surge of spiritual energy swirled around his palm. With a look of pure malice, he lunged at me, aiming a lethal blow at my chest. My father screamed my name, rushing forward to stop him. Even the other members of the Yang family, who usually hated me, looked horrified. They couldn't stand seeing an outsider bully one of their own. Nangong Shui watched the attack, her lips curling into a cruel smile. She didn't try to stop him. In her mind, if I died, her problem disappeared. She didn't think for a second that a tiny family like mine could ever threaten an elder of her sect. But her smile didn't last long. Suddenly, the mysterious woman appeared beside me like a ghost. With a casual flick of her finger, a flash of sword light cut through the air. A split second later, Elder Qing Yin was pinned to the floor by a beam of energy. The entire hall gasped in shock. A third-level martial grandmaster had been neutralized in the blink of an eye. The rest of the Qingyun disciples backed away, their faces pale with terror. Nangong Shui froze. She stared at the woman, her mind racing. Even her master, Qing Ro, couldn't have defeated the elder this easily. She realized she was looking at a power far beyond the martial grandmaster realm. Maybe even a martial king. Before anyone could react, the woman waved her sleeve. In a blur of motion, the heads of every other Qingyun disciple in the room went flying. Blood sprayed across the floor. The woman turned her gaze toward Nangong Shui. The girl's face went white, and her entire body began to tremble. I stepped forward and stopped the woman. I told Senior to spare her life. Senior looked at me, a strange glint in her eyes. She asked if I was sparing her because I still lusted after her body. Every person in the hall turned to look at me with a bizarre expression. I rolled my eyes, feeling incredibly frustrated. I explained that I wanted her to go back and deliver a message to her sect leader. I looked at Nangong Shui and told her to tell Qing Ro that I would remember today. One day, I would climb Qingyun Mountain myself to settle the debt. I walked over to a desk, grabbed a brush, and began to write. I wrote a letter of repudiation. I stated that Nangong Shui was a woman of wicked heart and broken promises, a person who tried to kill her own fiancé. I declared that I was the one throwing her away. When I finished, I dropped the brush and slapped the paper onto her chest. I told her she was finally free. Nangong Shui's face turned bright red with rage. She wasn't even married yet, and I had divorced her. If word of this got out, her reputation would be ruined forever. She ground her teeth, screaming that I was going too far. I cut her off instantly. I reminded her that she was the one who brought an army to my home to bully my family. She tried to argue, but I didn't let her speak. I told her she thought she was untouchable, sitting high above everyone else. I promised her that within 3 to 5 years, I would personally destroy the Qingyun sect. She let out a sharp, mocking laugh. She asked me who I thought I was. Before she could finish the sentence, I stepped forward and slapped her across the face. The force of the blow sent her flying across the room. The entire hall went silent again. I looked down at her and told her I didn't like hitting women, but she had pushed me too far. Whether I was worthy or not wasn't for her to decide. I looked down at Nangong Shui as she lay on the floor, her face twisted in a mixture of shock and pure hatred. I told her that for a person as vicious as her, even beating her to death wouldn't be enough to pay for what she had done. She glared up at me, her voice trembling with spite, and told me I would regret laying a hand on her. She swore that if she didn't get her revenge, she would rather die a miserable death. The people watching us were silent, their emotions a tangled mess. Nobody expected a supposed match made in heaven to turn into a blood feud. It felt like a cruel joke played by fate. As Nangong Shui's lonely figure finally vanished from the estate, a heavy cloud hung over the Yang family. They knew the truth. Once she returned to the Qingyan sect, we wouldn't just be rivals. We would be mortal enemies with a powerhouse we had no hope of defeating. Later, I retreated to my small courtyard. I spoke to the mysterious woman in my mind, asking if she thought I was being too arrogant or just hiding behind her shadow. She shook her head. She told me that when someone kicks down your door, staying silent isn't humility, it's stupidity. She explained that as a sword cultivator, I couldn't let my heart be shackled. If my spirit was suppressed, my sword would be too. I asked her why there were so few sword cultivators in the world. She told me it was because they were usually too blunt. They said exactly what they thought and never hid their feelings. While this kept their hearts pure, it also made them easy targets who rarely lived long enough to grow strong. I wondered if that meant a sword cultivator always had to be stubborn. She clarified that as long as my heart was honest and fearless, my path would remain clear. She smiled, telling me my journey would be a path no one had ever walked before. The next morning, my father, Yang Kuan, came rushing into my yard, laughing loudly. He was beaming with excitement. He told me he had great news. In 1 month, the Garan Academy would be coming to Qingyun City to recruit students. It was a legendary institution. Their dean was rumored to be at the Five Saint Realm, and the academy was famous throughout the entire Garan world. My father explained that the academy had produced masters who now shook the world, but their standards were brutal. They only took the best of the best. To even be considered, a student had to reach level 9 warrior status by the age of 16. As I hesitated, the woman's voice echoed in my head. She suggested that Garan Academy might be a good place for me to transition and grow. But then she dropped a bombshell. She told me she was leaving. She explained that the version of her I saw was just a clone, and her energy was about to fade away. I felt a surge of panic. I had grown used to her guidance. She told me the universe was vast, and compared to the stars, this world was just a grain of sand. She promised to help me one last time before she vanished. She told me to find a quiet place tomorrow, and she would help me break through to the 10th level of the warrior realm. I was confused. I thought every major realm only had 9 levels. She shook her head and told me I was wrong. She explained that every realm actually had a 10th level called the Extreme Realm. It was a hidden stage that most people had forgotten because it was so hard to reach. I asked why I should bother if I could just jump to the next major realm anyway. She looked at me like I was an idiot. She told me that if a cultivator reached the Extreme Realm, their power would double. If I hit the Extreme Realm at every stage, I could easily crush opponents at my own level and even kill those much stronger than me. My heart raced. I realized how massive this advantage was. I told her I didn't want to just rush into the next realm. I wanted the Extreme Realm, not just for now, but for every stage of my cultivation. At dawn the next day, I headed deep into the Qingyun Mountains to avoid any distractions. With my level 9 strength, I moved faster than ever. Following the woman's directions, I reached a hidden waterfall where the air was still and the beasts were few. The woman appeared, glancing at a sheer cliff face. She flicked her finger, and a beam of sword light carved a cave directly into the rock. I was stunned by her control. She could have leveled the whole mountain, yet she precisely carved out a perfect dwelling. She didn't wait for me to move. She waved her sleeve, and a gentle force lifted me off the ground, carrying me into the new cave. It was spacious, nearly 100 square meters. She held out her hand, revealing a glowing object. She called it the 9-star Jade Lotus. She told me this was the key I would use to step into the extreme realm. When I heard the name 9-star Jade Lotus, my heart skipped a beat. My father, Yang Kuan, looked at the glowing flower with wide eyes. He remembered it instantly. He asked if this was the same treasure that Lin Qingzhu had been trying to steal back then. The woman in my chest laughed softly. She told me I wasn't as stupid as I looked. She explained that the 9-star Jade Lotus was incredibly rare. Finding it in the Qingyun Mountains was a stroke of pure luck. She said it was the only thing powerful enough to help me step into the extreme realm. I was excited, but I needed to know how it worked. I asked her what the process was. She told me that the extreme realm was the true limit of a cultivation stage. To reach it, I had to use the lotus's energy to push my level 9 strength to absolute perfection. She warned me that my dantian would feel like it was going to explode. I had to resist the urge to break through to the next major realm. I had to endure the pain, no matter how unbearable it became. If I gave up halfway, I wouldn't just lose the lotus, I would lose my life. A cold sweat broke out on my forehead. I asked her if it was really that dangerous. She teased me, asking if I was scared and telling me I could still back out. I took a deep breath. To become a master, I had to take risks. I told her I was ready. She nodded, satisfied with my resolve. She raised her hand and tapped the air. A mysterious force wrapped around the lotus, and in seconds, the flower melted into a single drop of translucent liquid. I was stunned. I had studied medicine and alchemy during my years as a useless son, and I knew that even top-tier alchemists couldn't refine energy this perfectly. She told me to open my mouth. Before I could even respond, she flicked her finger, and the liquid shot down my throat. An explosion of energy hit me instantly. It felt like a tidal wave was crashing through my veins. Back when I wasn't a cultivator, my body would have disintegrated from this power. Now, even at level 9, I felt my body swelling up like a balloon. The woman's voice echoed in my head, telling me to circulate my cultivation technique immediately or I'd be blown to pieces. I didn't hesitate. I activated the starry sword technique, pulling the wild energy into my meridians. The pressure eased for a second, but then another wave hit. My dantian was filled to the brim. I gritted my teeth, sweat pouring off me, holding back the breakthrough with everything I had. Meanwhile, back at the Qingyun sect, things were falling apart. Nangong Shui stood before the great elder, Qing Xian. She looked miserable and defeated. She told him that Elder Qingyang and all the other disciples were dead. She was the only one left, sent back to deliver a warning. Qing Xian's face turned purple with rage. He couldn't believe someone dared to slaughter his people and look down on the Qingyun sect. He roared for the other elders, Qingmu, Qingzheng, and Qingming, to meet him at the assembly hall immediately. They weren't going to let this slide. 2 days passed in the cave. Suddenly, a massive boom echoed through the mountains. I did it. I hit level 10, the extreme realm. Outside, the sky changed. Strange bells chimed in the air, and purple light bathed the entire mountain range. It was a heavenly phenomenon, a sign that something legendary had been born. The woman looked up and smiled, remarking how rare it was to see the world react like this. I opened my eyes, feeling a surge of power I couldn't describe. The difference between level 9 and level 10 wasn't just a small step, it was a canyon. I turned to thank the woman, but the words died in my throat. Her body was fading. She looked almost transparent, like a ghost about to vanish. I panicked and asked what was happening to her. She cut me off, explaining that she had used too much power lately. Her clone was exhausted and was about to disappear. She told me she hoped I'd be a true powerhouse the next time we met. When I asked when that would be, she simply said she would appear whenever I needed her most. She tapped my forehead one last time. A flood of knowledge about sword cultivation filled my mind. She told me I was on my own now. She mentioned she had left a gift for me inside the Heaven-Earth sword, but I couldn't access it until I reached the Martial Emperor realm. As I got stronger, the sword would unlock its true power. She told me to keep training and to leave this small region as soon as possible. Then, she vanished. For the first time in a long time, I felt completely alone. She was the one who pulled me out of the dirt and showed me the path of the sword. I didn't know who she really was or why she helped me, but I knew I could trust her. I looked at the empty space where she stood and whispered to myself that I wouldn't let her wait too long. I wondered why she said she was waiting for me. I thought about it for a long time, but I had no clues, so I pushed the thought aside. I felt the surge of power inside my body and took a deep breath. It was time to go back. I had been away from home for several days, and the recruitment date for Kanglan Academy was getting closer. Now that the mysterious woman was gone, I had lost my greatest protector. I had to find a new backer for myself and the Yang family. I remembered the blood feud between the Qingyun sect and my family all too well. If she were still here, I wouldn't have feared their retaliation, but now, no one in the Yang family could stand up to them. Kanglan Academy had deep roots. If I could get in, we wouldn't have to live in fear anymore. I looked out over the endless Qingyun mountains and made a vow. No matter what, I had to enter that academy. Thinking about the danger my family was in, I lost all desire to stay in the mountains and practice. I rushed toward the exit. But just as I left the cave, I ran into a massive beast. It was an 8 Desolations boar, a rank 2 mid-stage spirit beast. Its strength was terrifying. The beast blocked my path, but I didn't waste a single word. I charged. I gripped the Heaven-Earth sword and slashed. I had just broken through to level 10, and I needed to see exactly how much stronger I had become. As I moved, the sword chi from my blade was so sharp it felt like it was tearing the very air apart. The boar saw me coming and bared its hideous tusks, its face twisting into a snarl. A split second later, it vanished in a blur. A loud crash echoed through the woods. The boar was sent flying backward, its massive body hitting the ground so hard the earth shook for 50 yards. Before it could recover, another flash of sword light arrived. The boar tried to block with its front hoof, but my blade sliced clean through. Blood sprayed everywhere as its leg was severed in two. The beast let out a roar of pure agony. I couldn't help but smirk. A rank 2 mid-stage beast was only at this level? I didn't give it a chance to breathe. I swung again, using a strike that felt like it could decide life or death. A massive wave of sword chi flew toward the beast. The boar's eyes filled with a rare look of terror. It didn't have much intelligence, so it just roared at the sky and gathered all its strength for one final, desperate charge. The ground trembled under its weight. A sharp ripping sound cut through the air. My sword chi shattered the boar's defenses like glass and pierced straight through its body. It let out one last, pathetic squeal as blood splattered the trees. It struggled to get up, wanting to tear me apart, but its body wouldn't obey. A moment later, its eyes rolled back, and it died, staring at me in resentment. I smiled. The difference between level 9 and level 10 was truly massive. Suddenly, a powerful surge of spiritual energy erupted from my right. I looked over, but I couldn't see anything through the dense forest. Curious, I tossed the boar's carcass into my storage ring and headed toward the source. As I got closer, the shockwaves became so intense they made my heart race. Who was fighting? The energy was this strong, even from a distance. I pushed my speed to the limit. When I finally reached the edge of the clearing, I froze. Holy crap, I whispered. Hovering in the air was a woman who looked like she had stepped out of a painting. She was wearing a long green dress, her hair pinned up elegantly with a pearl hairpin. She looked refined and graceful, but that wasn't what shocked me. It was the glow of spiritual energy beneath her feet. She was flying. My heart hammered against my ribs. Only those who reached the martial king realm could fly, but as I used my black name ring to scan her, I realized she was even stronger. She was a level 6 martial emperor. In the southern region, someone like her was basically a god. Opposite her stood a silver-winged lion. Its metallic wings shimmered under the sun, looking sharp enough to slice through mountains. I gulped. That was a rank 6 mid-stage spirit beast. The woman spoke, her voice calm. Lion King, if you lend me a drop of your essence blood, I will give you any treasure you desire in exchange. The lion let out a cold snort. Human, do you think my essence blood is cheap? Don't think you can talk down to me just because you're a martial emperor. You're dreaming. Essence blood was the most precious thing a cultivator or beast possessed. The stronger you were, the more power it held. Losing even a drop could cause your strength to plummet for a long time. I watched from the shadows, thinking this woman was asking for the impossible. If the Lion King lost its essence, Other beasts in the mountain would kill it in a heartbeat. Lion King, don't worry, the woman said again. I will give you a high-grade Earth-rank spiritual tool in exchange. It will protect you while you recover. Spiritual tools were ranked from heaven to yellow, and each rank had 3 grades. An Earth-rank tool was incredibly rare. The lion hesitated. With a tool like that, its status in the mountains would skyrocket. But after a moment, it shook its head. The temptation is great, but no. If the other powerful beasts find out I have such a treasure while I'm weakened, I won't survive the night. The woman nodded, as if she expected that answer. Since you won't trade, I'll have to take it by force. I need that blood today, no matter what. The silver-winged lion let out a deafening roar, its wings spreading wide as it prepared to kill. The lion roared, the sound vibrating through my very bones. Human, do you think I'm playing games with you? It growled. This was a level 6 spirit beast, an absolute monster. Its eyes locked onto the woman in green, radiating a murderous pressure. Spiritual energy erupted from its body. The force was so violent that the ancient trees nearby were instantly ground into ash. I felt my stomach drop. I scrambled backward, putting as much distance between me and that power as I could. The woman glanced toward my hiding spot for a split second. Then, she looked back at the beast. Lion King, I don't want to be your enemy, she said softly. But a level 6 beast's essence is vital to me. Please, forgive my rudeness. The Lion King let out a mocking laugh. You think I'm an idiot? Humans are greedy and deceitful. That's no secret. Stop wasting your breath with these lies. The woman sighed and shook her head. She didn't say another word. A long sword appeared in her hand, and she vanished, reappearing right in front of the beast. The battle was instant and terrifying. The woman moved with the grace of a dragon, her sword light flashing like lightning. The Lion King was a blur of silver and black, its claws tearing through the air and its mouth spitting torrents of fire. The wind howling off the cliffs felt like a funeral dirge. The Lion King's roars echoed through the valley, shaking the earth itself. Despite the woman's skill, the beast's sheer physical power started to push her back. Its silver wings sliced through the clouds, firing off bolts of electricity that lit up the sky. It turned into a literal ball of fire and lunged at her. The woman didn't flinch. She swung her sword with a ferocious intensity. Azure sword energy flooded the area. Suddenly, the world around them changed. Rocks began to float. The nearby river surged upward. A massive barrier of spiritual energy slammed down, trapping them both inside a dome of light. When the barrier finally faded, they were still locked in combat. The woman looked lighter, her eyes clear and calm, staring directly into the beast's savage gaze. The tension in the air was thick enough to choke on. The Lion King roared again, its wings whipping up a hurricane-force gale. It charged with incredible speed, teeth and claws bared. The woman swung her blade at its throat, but the beast dodged, spinning its body to slam its massive tail into her chest. She reacted in a heartbeat. She pulled back, blocked the blow with a shield in her left hand, and swung her sword with her right. It was a desperate struggle. The lion was relentless, abandoning its aerial advantage to rush her on the ground. Then, she saw her opening. She performed a brilliant feint, leaping past the beast's flank and spinning midair. She drove her sword down with everything she had. The Lion King stumbled, crashing into the dirt and sending rocks flying. She didn't hesitate. She stepped forward and plunged her blade straight into its heart. A flash of silver light erupted. The Lion King went limp. It was over, or so I thought. As the woman knelt down to extract the essence blood, a look of pure horror crossed her face. She tried to leap back, but she was a second too late. The dead lion snapped its eyes open. A cruel, mocking smile twisted its face. "If I'm going down, you're coming with me," it spat. A blast of overwhelming power exploded from the lion's body, hitting her point blank. She flew backward, coughing up a spray of bright red blood. Her green dress was instantly stained with crimson flowers. Her face went pale, her energy vanishing in an instant. The lion wasn't done. Using its last breath, it manifested a long spear in its claw and thrust it forward. The weapon buried itself deep into the woman's chest. She screamed, spitting out more blood as she staggered back. She grit her teeth, forcing every last drop of her remaining spiritual power into one final strike. Her sword pierced the lion again, and this time, the light in its eyes stayed dark. It was finally dead. Weak and trembling, the woman crawled to the beast's side. She finished gathering the essence blood, her movements slow and pained. Once the last drop was secured, her head slumped. She collapsed right there on the dirt. I stood there, my heart racing. My blood was on fire. That was the most intense fight I had ever seen in my life. The woman was powerful, but she was out cold now. I crept forward, my eyes darting around. I reached the bodies and noticed a storage ring glinting on the lion's claw. A slow, wicked smile spread across my face. I didn't waste a second. I grabbed the ring and shoved the entire lion's carcass into my own storage space. Then, I looked at the woman. She was incredibly beautiful, but she was dying. A spear was still lodged in her chest, and blood was pooling under her. A thought struck me. If I saved her, I'd have a massive debt from a powerful cultivator. I needed a backer to handle the Chinyan sect. This was my chance. I reached down and scooped her up in a princess carry. I didn't stick around to see if anything else was coming. I turned and vanished into the trees, heading straight for a secluded cave I had spotted earlier. I looked at the spear buried in the woman's chest. My mind was racing. Should I pull it out? The weapon was lodged deep. If I wanted to remove it, I would have to strip away her clothes first. I hesitated. This woman was a terrifyingly powerful cultivator. If she woke up and realized I had undressed her, the consequences would be more than a level 10 martial artist like me could handle. She could kill me with a flick of her finger. But if I didn't pull it out, she would bleed to death. I stared at her. Her breathing was getting weaker by the second. I decided to gamble. If I saved her and she didn't kill me, I would have the ultimate backer. I took a deep breath and began to slowly peel away her green dress. As the fabric slid down, her body was revealed. She was flawless. Her skin was as white as snow, and her curves were perfect. Even though I tried to keep my mind focused on the wound, my body had a mind of its own. I felt a rush of heat. In a moment of madness, I leaned down and pressed my lips against hers. Her lips were soft and fragrant. My mind went blank. What I didn't see was her eyelashes trembling for a split second. A tiny ripple of spiritual energy flickered around her. It was weak, but it was enough to kill me instantly. Suddenly, I snapped out of it. I pulled back, my heart hammering against my ribs. What am I doing? I whispered. I'm supposed to be saving her. I'm a beast. I gave myself a hard slap across the face. The sting helped clear my head, but the heat in my body wouldn't go away. It felt like thousands of insects were crawling under my skin. I couldn't stay there. I rushed out of the cave and dove straight into a nearby cold pool. The icy water finally dampened the fire in my blood. Inside the cave, the woman opened her eyes. They were cold and sharp. If that boy had tried anything else, she whispered to herself, I would have killed him with my own hands. He actually took my first kiss. I'm going to kill him. A faint, beautiful blush crept onto her pale cheeks despite her anger. Once I regained my composure, I headed back into the cave. I bit my lip, forcing myself not to look at her body with anything but a healer's focus. I gripped the spear. With one swift motion, I ripped it out. Blood sprayed across my face and chest. The woman let out a sharp cry of pain. I didn't waste time. I grabbed her torn green dress and started wiping the blood from the wound. Once it was clean, I bandaged her up and dressed her in one of my own clean white robes. I collapsed onto the ground, exhausted. But then, a voice like a silver bell echoed in the quiet cave. Who are you? I jumped, my heart nearly leaping out of my throat. I turned to see her watching me, her eyes bright and intense. I had to undress you to fix the wound. I blurted out immediately. It was an emergency. Please don't be angry. She looked down at herself. The white robe was a bit big, but it draped over her curves perfectly. She realized I had seen everything. Her face flushed red again. She glared at me. What is your name? I hesitated. She was powerful and mysterious. I didn't want to bring trouble to my family. My name is Yang Qing. I lied. And yours? Qing Shui, she replied after a moment. Thank you for saving my life today. I waved it off. Just don't kill me. That's thanks enough. She looked at me suspiciously. Why are you soaking wet? I felt my face heat up. It was hot outside. I went for a swim. She rolled her eyes. With your clothes on? I gave her a forced smile and stayed silent. The more I said, the more likely I was to mess up. Come here, she said. Help me up. I helped her sit, and she took a medicinal pill from her own storage. She closed her eyes and began to meditate. A day passed. When she woke up again, I had a meal of roasted demon beast meat waiting for her. She thanked me and ate with an elegance that showed her high status. Yang Qing, she said after finishing. My recovery will take some time. Am I holding you up? I'm just here in the Linyan Mountains to train, I told her. I've got nothing but time. Just focus on getting better. A flash of joy crossed her face, but she hid it quickly. Strange, she murmured. I can't see through your cultivation level. Have you reached the martial grandmaster realm? I laughed and shook my head. No way. I'm only at the martial artist realm. I have a spiritual tool that hides my presence. I was using my Black Ming ring. Reaching the 10th level of the martial artist realm was a massive secret. If people found out I had reached the extreme realm, it would bring nothing but trouble. She nodded. She knew about such tools and didn't press further. She just seemed confused that someone my age was still at such a low level. The days turned into weeks. 20 days later, we stood by a waterfall. Thank you for everything, Qing Shui said, looking at the crashing water. But it's time for me to go. Hearing those words, a heavy weight settled in my chest. These past 20 days had been the best of my life, full of peace, smiles, and a strange sweetness. I didn't want it to end. I looked at her, unable to hide the sadness on my face. I wasn't ready to say goodbye. The moment for our separation had finally arrived. Qing Shui's sect recruitment was about to start, and she had to head back immediately. I looked at her, trying to keep my voice steady. I asked if we would ever see each other again. Over the past few weeks, we had talked about everything. Even though we hadn't mentioned that brief, intimate moment between us again, we both knew how we felt. Qing Shui looked at me, her gaze soft. She told me that if fate allowed it, we would meet. If not, she didn't finish the sentence. I could see the conflict in her eyes. She was a 6th-level martial emperor, while I was just a lowly martial artist. She probably wondered if there was any real future for us. A bitter look crossed her face before she suddenly made an offer. She asked if I wanted to go to the Qingyun sect to cultivate. She said she could introduce me. I cut her off before she could finish. I told her a small character like me wasn't fit for a place like that. The truth was, I already had an irreconcilable grudge against the Qingyun sect. I wouldn't step foot in there even if it was the greatest sect in the southern region. Confusion washed over her beautiful face. She could clearly feel the hostility in my voice. Before she could press me for answers, I put on a cold, proud mask. I told her I had important business to attend to and that we should part ways. I said if fate was on our side, we'd meet again. If not, then that was it. I stopped myself from saying more. Qing Shui frowned, likely wondering why I reacted so strongly to the mention of her sect. Seeing that I didn't want to talk about it, she didn't push. She flipped her palm, and 2 items appeared, a long sword and a set of azure dragon armor. She explained they were both Earth-grade spiritual tools. The armor, she noted, would be incredibly helpful for my safety while training in the Linyan Mountains. I didn't refuse them. Between us, there was no need for polite thanks. I took the gifts, and a smile finally broke through her sadness. I reached into my robes and pulled out a jade pendant. It was a translucent green, carved with the character for Yang. I told her I had worn this since I was a child. It was the only thing my mother had left me. I handed it to her, and for a moment, time seemed to stop. We just stood there, staring into each other's eyes, neither of us wanting to look away. Suddenly, the transmission jade at my waist buzzed. A frantic voice broke the silence. It was a message telling me to return immediately because the family was in trouble. The warmth of the moment vanished instantly. I told her I had to go. I turned to leave, my heart heavy, but after a few steps, I couldn't help myself. I turned back and pulled her into a tight embrace. Qing Shui's mind went blank. She didn't push me away, she just let me hold her. I whispered that I really had to go this time. As she murmured a soft response, I pressed my lips against hers. It was a rough, sudden kiss that lasted only a second before I pulled away. By the time she realized what had happened, I was already gone, disappearing into the woods. She watched the empty path for a long time before she, too, vanished in a flash of spiritual light. Back at the Yang family estate, chaos had broken out. A group of powerful enemies was raiding us. Many of the weaker disciples had already been killed. My father, Yang Kuan, looked at the carnage and turned to the third elder. He ordered the elders to take the younger generation and retreat while he held the enemies back. He refused to let the entire family die there. The third elder, Yang Wu, and the fourth elder, Yang Zong, protested. Ever since the first and second elders had died, they had become fiercely loyal to my father. They weren't afraid to die by his side, but my father wouldn't hear it. He commanded them to leave immediately. Reluctantly, they led the survivors toward the back gate, promising to return once the others were safe. Just then, a group of masked men cornered my father. One of them laughed and told him to prepare to die. The man struck out with a single punch, sending my father flying backward. My father struggled to his feet, wiping blood from his lip. He asked if they were from the Qingyan sect. He mocked them, asking if the top sect in the region wasn't ashamed of such cowardly tactics. My father was a 6th-level martial spirit, yet this man had brushed him aside with one hit. There were no experts like this in Garant City. It had to be them. The attacker laughed and ripped off his mask. It was Qing Xian, the great elder of the Qingyan sect. He demanded to know where the mysterious woman who supported our family was. He knew my father was no match for him. My father felt a wave of bitterness. The mysterious woman, the one living in my chest, was away with me. If she were here, the Yang family wouldn't be suffering like this. He looked at Qing Xian and told him she wasn't at the estate. Qing Xian's face twisted into a snarl of pure impatience. Qing Xian's face twisted with rage. He realized the mysterious woman I traveled with wasn't there. He figured she knew they were coming and had hidden away. He snarled that if he couldn't kill her, he would start by killing my father. He threw a devastating punch, the force of it promising to turn everything in its path into rubble. Just as the strike was about to hit my father, a figure in a gray robe and a mask appeared out of thin air. The stranger threw a punch of his own. The collision didn't just cancel out Qing Xian's attack. It sent the great elder flying back dozens of feet. Qing Xian scrambled to find his footing, his face pale. He demanded to know who the man was, and why he would dare oppose the Qingyan sect. The masked man just laughed. He told Qing Xian that his sect wasn't nearly as important as he thought it was. Before anyone could react, a streak of spiritual light erupted beneath the stranger's feet. He grabbed my father and vanished in the blink of an eye. The remaining Qingyun elders gathered around Qing Xian, asking if they should give chase. Suddenly, Qing Xian doubled over and coughed up a thick spray of blood. He told them to stop. He realized the masked man was a martial emperor, a level of power they couldn't hope to match. The elders were stunned. Qing Xian was a 7th-level martial king, the strongest person in the sect besides the sect leader herself. If he was helpless against this stranger, the rest of them would just be throwing their lives away. They had no choice but to retreat. Silence returned to the ruins of the Yang estate. After a long moment, a pile of bodies shifted. A girl crawled out from the mountain of corpses, her clothes soaked in blood and her hair a tangled mess. It was Yang Shui. She looked at the home she had grown up in, now reduced to smoldering debris, and squeezed her fists until her knuckles turned white. The third and fourth elders, Yang Wu and Yang Zong, rushed back to the scene after securing the other survivors. When Yang Shui saw them, she broke down. She told them through tears that the Yang family was gone. The elders looked around at the bodies littering the ground. The once crowded estate was now a graveyard. Yang Wu grabbed Yang Shui's shoulders, his voice trembling. He asked if she had seen my father. Yang Kuan was the pillar of our family. If he was dead, we were truly finished. I finally arrived at the gates just then. My heart sank as I took in the destruction. The elders and Yang Shui spun around, their guards up, fearing the Qingyun sect had returned. When they saw it was me, they let out a collective sigh of relief. They had been trying to contact me for a day, but I was too far away. Now that I was back, they felt a glimmer of hope. They knew about the powerful woman who supported me. I looked at the ruins of our beautiful pavilions and felt a cold, sharp, killing intent rise in my chest. My aura was so intense it made the elders shiver. I turned to Yang Wu and asked where my father was. He looked at Yang Shui. I stared at her, my usual playful attitude completely gone. Yang Shui didn't hesitate. She told me it was the great elder of the Qingyun sect, Qing Xian. He was the one who destroyed our home and slaughtered our kin. Hearing that name again made me shake with fury. I roared at the sky, swearing that if I didn't wipe the Qingyun sect off the face of the earth, I wasn't fit to be called a man. I promised that Qing Xian would pay for this 100 times over. Yang Wu cut in, his eyes full of worry. He asked again if anyone had seen the clan leader. I turned to Yang Shui, desperate for news. She pulled out a small stone, a soul crystal. It was glowing with a vibrant green light. This stone held a sliver of my father's soul. As long as it glowed, he was alive. Yang Shui explained that after Qing Xian had beaten my father senseless, a masked man appeared and took him away. She mentioned that the stranger was so strong even Qing Xian couldn't touch him. She had overheard them saying the man was a martial emperor. I asked the elders if they knew any martial emperors who would help us. They shook their heads. Our family status was too low to know anyone that powerful. In the southern region, martial emperors were as rare as phoenix feathers. I reached out and took the soul crystal from Yang Wu. I told them I would keep it to monitor my father's safety. The elders didn't object. With my father missing, they declared me the acting head of the family and promised to follow my orders. I didn't have time for formalities. I needed to protect what was left of our people. I asked where the survivors were. Yang Wu told me they had built a secret shelter years ago for a disaster just like this. He sighed, admitting he never actually thought we would have to use it. I never thought we would actually have to use that shelter. It was meant for a day that should have never come. Yang Wu gestured for me to follow them, his voice heavy with the weight of our fallen clan. He told me the survivors were already there, hidden away. I shook my head. I wasn't going with them. I told the elders that the remaining clansmen were in their hands now. If I showed up at the shelter, I would only bring trouble. The enemies hunting me would find them, and I couldn't risk another massacre. My plan was different. The Kanglan Academy was starting its recruitment soon. I told them I intended to join. It had been my father's greatest wish for me. The elders nodded, their faces grim, but Yang Shui gasped in surprise. She started to call me by a formal title, then quickly corrected herself, her eyes wide. She asked me how I expected to get in with my current cultivation level. Then, she stopped mid-sentence. Her expression shifted from worry to pure shock. She realized she couldn't see through my cultivation anymore. She asked if I had broken through to the martial master realm. It made sense to her. She was a second-grade martial master, so if she couldn't read me, I had to be stronger than her. Before I could answer, Yang Wu let out a sharp breath. He admitted that he couldn't see my level either. The air in the room grew tense. I didn't tell them the truth. I was using the black nether ring to hide my presence. Even someone stronger than me wouldn't be able to gauge my true strength. I lied to them. I told them I had recently acquired a spiritual tool and that I was still just a martial artist. I saw the tension leave their shoulders. They let out a collective sigh of relief. It was easier for them to believe a tool was hiding my power than to accept I had grown that strong so quickly. Then, Yang Wu and Yang Zong shared a look. They asked if the mysterious woman who had helped me before could take revenge for the family. They knew that with her power, even the Qingyun sect leader wouldn't stand a chance. If she helped us, we could find my father much sooner. I felt a bitter pang in my chest. I told them she was gone. Their faces fell, replaced by a deep, hollow disappointment. I told the elders to focus on the survivors. I took the burden of the family's revival and my father's disappearance onto my own shoulders. The Qingyun sect had turned our lives into a nightmare. Yang Zong gripped my arm, his voice trembling. He begged me not to be impulsive. With my father gone, the family was already wounded. If something happened to me, the Yang name would be erased forever. I told them they were worrying too much. I wasn't going on a suicide mission. I was going to Kanglan Academy to get stronger. I didn't need to be the strongest in the world. I just needed enough power so that no one would ever dare to step on us again. Seeing my determination, the elders stopped arguing. They knew the family needed a powerful backer. If I could make it into the academy, the Yang family might actually have a future. Yang Shui spoke up then, her voice soft. She reminded me that the academy only took students under 16 who were at least 9th-level martial artists. She looked at me with doubt, clearly thinking I wasn't there yet. The elders sighed, their hope flickering out. They thought the Yang family was destined to stay in the shadows. I stayed calm. I told them not to worry. I wouldn't be going if I wasn't 100% sure I could get in. I had already reached the extreme realm. My plan was to suppress my aura and present myself as a 9th-level martial artist for the exam. I was exactly 16. I met every requirement. There was no reason for them to reject me. They went silent, wondering if that mysterious woman had left me with some kind of secret advantage. They didn't ask. They knew if I wanted them to know, I would have said so. Soon, the ruins of the Yang estate were empty, except for me and Yang Shui. I felt a strange sense of peace amidst the rubble. I had to stay level-headed. Every choice I made now would either save my family or bury them. I couldn't let my father's legacy die. For the next few days, I stayed in the ruins and practiced. Yang Shui never left my side. She claimed she just wanted to see the place where she grew up one last time, but I knew better. She was afraid I'd be attacked. I was the family's last hope. Even with the history between us, she couldn't afford to lose me. If I fell, she would truly be homeless. When the day finally arrived, I put on a clean white robe and set off with Yang Shui toward the recruitment grounds. She told me she would introduce me to her mentor, Pei Qiu. He was the one in charge of recruitment in Qingyan City. She figured having a connection would save us some trouble. I nodded, fine with anything that made the process faster. I didn't realize she was only doing it because she thought I couldn't pass on my own merit. She was trying to get me in through the back door. We arrived at the site to find a sea of people. The Kanglan Academy was famous across the entire realm, and thousands had shown up for a chance at a better life. The testing had already begun. Boys and girls were lined up to have their bone age, cultivation, and talent measured. Because Yang Shui was a student, we bypassed the crowds and walked straight up to Pei Qiu. The mentor was wearing loose, elegant robes. She wasn't a classic beauty, but there was something striking about her that made it hard to look away. When I felt the sheer pressure of her cultivation, I couldn't help but feel a jolt of surprise. I looked at mentor Pei Qiu and felt a flicker of doubt. She was only a level 9 martial spirit. While that made her the strongest person in Qingyan City, it felt a bit low for a prestigious place like Kanglan Academy. I expected the legendary school to be filled with monsters, but maybe my standards were shifting. Yang Shui didn't seem to care. She ran straight to Pei Qiu and hugged her arm, acting like a spoiled child. She told the mentor how much she missed her, but Pei Qiu wasn't buying it. She rolled her eyes and asked what kind of trouble Yang Shui was trying to stir up this time. Yang Shui stuck out her tongue and pointed at me. She asked if Pei Qiu could make an exception and let me into the academy through the back door. Pei Qiu's expression soured immediately. She reminded Yang Shui that the academy's rules were absolute, and that favoritism was a serious crime. Yang Shui hung her head, looking defeated. But then, Pei Qiu sighed. She looked at me, her eyes narrowing as she sensed something off. She realized I was using my qi to mask my actual cultivation level. Without a word, she reached into her spatial ring and pulled out a small, ornate mirror. It was the Wangchuan mirror, a high-grade spirit tool designed specifically to see through any hidden cultivation below the Martial King realm. It was the Academy's ultimate lie detector for recruits. She funneled a bit of power into the glass, and a burst of 5-colored light wrapped around me like a cocoon. I felt a strange sensation, like someone was peering directly into my soul. A moment later, Pei Qiu's face went pale. She shoved the mirror back into her ring and stared at me with wide, trembling eyes. She told me to follow her immediately. Yang Shui tried to tag along, but Pei Qiu snapped at her to stay put. We walked to a secluded corner, far from the prying eyes of the crowd. Pei Qiu turned to me, her voice hushed and heavy with shock. She told me she never expected to see a legend in the flesh. She had seen my secret. She knew I had reached the extreme realm. My blood ran cold. If the world found out I had achieved a level of power that shouldn't exist, I would be hunted until the day I died. But Pei Qiu smiled, sensing my fear. She promised she wouldn't steal my secrets or tell a soul. In fact, she was thrilled. Bringing a talent like me back to the academy would guarantee her a promotion to senior mentor. She told me to pack my things because we were leaving the next morning. When I walked back to Yang Shui, I didn't tell her the truth. I just smiled and said Pei Qiu had decided to help me out as a personal favor to her. Yang Shui was skeptical, but Pei Qiu played along, joking that she might change her mind if Yang Shui kept questioning her. Suddenly, a massive explosion of light erupted in the northern sky. It was a brilliant, five-colored glow that painted the clouds in shades of gold and jade. The crowd went into a frenzy. Someone screamed that a spirit treasure was being born. The energy coming from the north was staggering, even from this distance. Most of the people waiting for the recruitment test abandoned their spots and sprinted toward the light, driven by greed. Pei Qiu watched them go, her expression neutral. She turned to her student, Di Jun, and asked for the final count. Only 3 people had passed the actual test. Pei Qiu nodded, satisfied with the quality over quantity. Then, she turned to me and asked if she could visit my family home before we left. My heart sank. Both Yang Shui and I turned pale. I told her the truth. I told her the Yang family was gone, reduced to rubble by our enemies. Yang Shui stepped forward and explained how the Qingyun sect had attacked us without mercy. Pei Qiu's face twisted with rage. She slammed her hand down, cursing the Qingyun sect for their tyranny. She looked at us both and made a vow. From this moment on, the remnants of the Yang family were under the protection of Kanglin Academy. If the Qingyun sect dared to touch us again, the academy would tear them apart. It was exactly what I needed to hear. The tide was finally turning. Yang Shui and I bid farewell to instructor Pei Qiu for the day. While we headed back, Pei Qiu retreated to a secluded spot and pulled out a unique transmission jade. It was a high-grade tool, incredibly rare and expensive, something most people would never even see in their lifetime. She looked solemn as she activated it. "Principal," she said, her voice tight with importance. "I found a seedling, a genius unlike anyone you could imagine." A moment of silence passed before a thick, deep voice echoed from the jade. "Pei Qiu, how many geniuses have I seen over the years? Do you think our Kanglin Academy is lacking talent? I told you to broaden your horizons and not get distracted by ordinary things. You still haven't fixed that habit." "Principal, this one is different," Pei Qiu insisted. "He reached the extreme realm, the legendary state of the Kanglin world. It's unprecedented." "Impossible," the principal barked back. "Absolutely impossible. The extreme realm is a myth. No one has ever stepped into that mysterious state since ancient times." "I used the mirror of insight you gave me," Pei Qiu countered. "I saw through his cultivation myself. Unless you think your profound-grade spiritual tool is broken." The line went silent. The mirror of insight could see through any illusion below the 5 elements realm. If it wasn't broken, then the impossible was true. "Ensure his safety." The principal's voice was now sharp and urgent. "Bring him back. I will test him personally." "There is a problem," Pei Qiu said, her tone hesitating. "His family situation is complicated. I didn't dare make the call myself." She quickly explained the blood feud between the Yang family and the Qingyun sect. After a long pause, the principal spoke with chilling authority. "If this Yang fan is truly an extreme realm martial artist, then the Yang family is under the protection of Kanglin Academy. I will personally send someone to the Qingyun sect. If they want to keep causing trouble, I don't mind breaking their spirit." Pei Qiu sighed in relief. "I'll return to the academy tomorrow. You can see for yourself." Meanwhile, Yang Shui and I stood among the ruins of our family home. The place where I grew up was now just rubble and ash. I looked at the destruction and felt a cold fire burning in my chest. "Father," I whispered, my voice firm. "One day, I will make the Yang family glorious again. Everything the Qingyun sect did to us, I will make them pay back 100-fold." Yang Shui stared at me, stunned. Facing a titan like the Qingyun sect, I wasn't shrinking in fear. I was ready for war. I didn't look like the useless loser she remembered. "Let's go see the rest of the clan," I told her. "We're leaving for the academy soon, and I don't know when we'll be back. I need to know they're safe." She nodded and followed me. With the Yang family gone, the Liu and Dong families had become the new masters of Qingyun City. As we walked through the crowded streets, people pointed and whispered. Everyone knew we had been slaughtered. I was used to the stares, but Yang Shui, who had always been the pride of the city, couldn't take it. "You think you can gossip just because we're down?" She snapped at a group of onlookers. "A starved camel is still bigger than a horse. Say one more word, and I'll make you regret it." "My, what a big mouth you have," a mocking voice drawled. A young man in expensive silk robes stepped forward. It was Lu Zhe, the young master of the Lu family. Lu Zhe, Yang Shui hissed. Does your family want trouble with us? Lu Zhe burst into laughter. The Yang family? Does a Yang family even exist anymore? His guards joined in, their faces twisted with derision. In the past, they wouldn't have dared to look us in the eye. Now, they treated us like dirt. You go too far, Yang Shui screamed. She lunged at him. As a second-level martial master, she was fast, her fist flying toward his face. But before she could land a hit, a powerful force slammed into her. Boom! Yang Shui was sent flying back, skidding several feet across the dirt. I looked at the man who had stepped in front of Lu Zhe. He was a middle-aged man in gray robes. A fifth-level martial master. He was Lu Zhe's personal bodyguard. With that pathetic strength, you really shouldn't show off, Lu Zhe sneered. He turned to his guard. Grab her. I've been thinking about her for years. We're taking her back. Yang Shui's face turned red with fury. Lu Zhe, I am a student of Kanglin Academy. You wouldn't dare. My sister is also at Kanglin Academy, Lu Zhe countered, his eyes roaming over her body. And her cultivation is higher than yours. Who cares? I rolled my eyes. I've seen shameless people, but this is a new low. Yang Shui was trembling, her chest heaving with rage. If you submit to me today, Lu Zhe continued, I'll make sure you live a better life than you ever had. Otherwise, don't blame me for taking what I want by force. That was the breaking point. Yang Shui pulled a short blade and charged. But the guard was too fast. He threw a punch that sent her reeling back again. She stood there, fists clenched, tears of frustration welling in her eyes. She had always had our grandfather to protect her. Now, she was helpless against a fifth-level master. I stepped forward, a cold smile on my face. Lu Zhe, does having one fifth-level martial master really make you this arrogant? Fine. I'll break that arrogance myself. Lu Zhe laughed until he nearly choked. You useless trash? Since Yang Kuan is gone, there's no reason for you to exist anymore. Kill him. The guard didn't hesitate. He lunged at me, his power exploding outward. A fifth-level martial master was a powerhouse in this city. Yang Shui turned pale, knowing she couldn't stop him. She thought I was dead for sure. Slap. The sound echoed through the street. Lu Zhe, who had been standing there triumphantly, was suddenly spinning through the air. He hit the ground hard, his face swelling instantly. I had moved so fast that even Yang Shui hadn't seen me. Lu Zhe clutched his face, his eyes wild with rage. Kill him. I said kill him now. The guard roared and charged again. To the people of Qinyan City, this man was an unstoppable force. Yang Shui tried to rush in to help me, her heart sinking, but I just let out a cold snort. I had given this guy enough face, but he just wouldn't take it. Did he really think being a fifth-level martial master made him invincible under heaven? I was done with his arrogance. I'm going to break that pride of yours right now, I growled. The Heaven-Earth sword materialized in my grip. Without a second of hesitation, I swung. I poured everything into a single strike, a strike to decide life and death. A powerful arc of sword chi tore through the air, literally ripping through space itself. It slammed directly into the guard's incoming fist. The crowd gasped. In a flash of cold steel, the guard's entire right hand was split clean down the middle. He collapsed, clutching the bloody mess of his arm, rolling on the ground and screaming in pure agony. Everyone froze. They stared at me like they were seeing a ghost. Yang Shui's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with shock. How is this possible? She whispered. Since when was Yang Fan this strong? I ignored the whispers and walked slowly toward Lu Zhe. The man looked like he'd seen a demon. The smug grin he had earlier was gone, replaced by a face pale with terror. Where did all that bravado go? I asked, my voice cold. Come on, act tough for me one more time. Lu Zhe's face turned a dark, bruised shade of purple. He tried to steady his trembling voice. Young Fan, I didn't think you were hiding this deep. It seems the entire Qinyan City was fooled by you. The rest of the Lu family members backed away, their eyes filled with sudden resentment and fear. If a fifth-level martial master couldn't even take one hit from me, they stood no chance. I chuckled. Lu Zhe, I know you're trying to stall for time, but do you really think I'll give it to you? Lu Zhe flinched. He hadn't expected me to see right through him. He gritted his teeth and shouted, "I've already notified my father. If you touch me, he will never let you go." His father was Lu Ying, a powerful martial grandmaster. Along with my father, Yang Kuan, and a man named Dong Chao, he was one of the 3 great experts of Qingyan City. If Lu Ying showed up, I'd be trapped. A wicked smile crossed my face. In that case, I'd better kill you now to save myself the trouble later. I raised my sword and started walking toward him. The Lu family guards panicked. They knew if anything happened to Lu Zhe, they were dead men anyway. But looking at the murderous intent in my eyes, none of them dared to step in my way. Lu Zhe broke. He realized his cultivation level was no match for mine, so he turned tail and ran. But the moment he turned his back, I swung. A sharp blade of energy chased after him, closing the gap in a heartbeat. The guards broke out in a cold sweat, certain their young master was about to be cleaved in two. Suddenly, a massive surge of power blocked my sword chi. A thick, booming voice echoed through the street. I never expected the Yang family to produce a sword cultivator. The crowd erupted. A sword cultivator? In Qingyan City, such a thing was unheard of. I had been a useless waste for 10 years, yet here I was, practicing the most envied path in the world. Yang Shui looked at me with renewed wonder. In the Kanglan realm, many people used swords, but very few were true sword cultivators. Using a sword is just a skill. Being a sword cultivator is a Dao. The onlookers looked at me with a mix of envy and confusion. Was the secret to becoming a sword cultivator to spend a decade being a failure first? The status of a sword cultivator was legendary. They were said to be invincible among their peers. A middle-aged man blurred into existence in the center of the street. Lu Zhe saw him and burst into tears. "Father, you're finally here. If you were any later, your bloodline would have ended today." It was Lu Ying, one of the 3 giants of the city. Yang Shui stepped up beside me, her expression grim. She knew exactly who this man was. I felt a weight in my chest. Lu Ying had arrived much faster than I anticipated. Lu Ying looked at me and smiled, though his eyes remained cold. It seems Yang Kuan raised a fine son. So young, yet already a sword cultivator with such power. I gripped my sword tight, staying alert. "Chief Lu, surely you don't intend to bully a junior today?" I was worried. Even though I had reached the extreme realm and could fight most martial masters, Lu Ying was a veteran grandmaster on the same level as my father. I was no match for him yet. "Go," I whispered to Yang Shui. "I'll hold him off. If you don't leave now, neither of us will." Yang Shui looked at me, a flicker of warmth crossing her eyes. Ever since the Qingyun sect attacked our family, she had been cold and driven by duty. She had blamed me for the deaths in our family. But hearing me offer to sacrifice myself for her, the ice around her heart started to melt. The hatred she harbored was fading. She looked at my determined face and suddenly smiled. "We'll face this together." I frowned. "Are you crazy? If you don't leave, there won't be another chance." Lu Ying let out a mocking laugh. "You think you can still leave? If I let 2 juniors escape from my hands, how could I ever show my face in Qingyan City again? If you want to call it bullying, go ahead. I can live with that reputation." "Despicable," Yang Shui hissed. Before the words even left her mouth, Lu Ying was in front of us. His speed was terrifying. He leaned toward her. "Little girl, say that again. I didn't quite hear you." I stepped in front of Yang Shui, shielding her. "Chief Lu, it's one thing to bully a junior, but are you really going to intimidate a defenseless girl?" Yang Shui stared at my back, deeply moved. In this moment of life and death, I was putting myself between her and a monster. Lu Ying chuckled. "I didn't realize you were such a romantic. Is there something going on between you two?" Yang Shui's face turned bright red with embarrassment and anger. Her body trembled, but she didn't back down. Then, Lu Zhe spoke up from behind his father. "Father, kill Yang Fan. I want Yang Shui to be my bed warmer." Lu Ying nodded toward me. "Since that's the case, you can die now. Your little girlfriend will be busy keeping my son warm tonight." He raised his fist, and a terrifying amount of energy gathered there. I felt the pure killing intent radiating off him. I tightened my grip on the Heaven-Earth sword. I knew I couldn't win, but I wasn't going down without a fight. I wasn't about to sit there and wait for death. Just as I braced myself, Lu Ying lunged forward, his fist glowing with a terrifying energy aimed straight for my gut. The sheer power behind the strike made my heart skip a beat. I couldn't dodge it. No, Yang Shui screamed, her voice cracking with desperation. In that split second, a graceful figure blurred into motion in front of me. With a casual flick of her sleeve, a massive shockwave erupted. Lu Ying didn't just stop. He was sent flying backward, his boots skidding across the ground for over 30 feet before he could steady himself. I looked up. It was Pei Qiu. Yang Shui's eyes welled up with tears the moment she saw her. Instructor Pei Qiu, you're finally here. They almost killed Yang Fan. Pei Qiu reached out and gently stroked Yang Shui's hair, her expression softening with pity. Don't cry, she whispered. No one is going to hurt you while I'm here. Then, she turned toward Lu Ying, her eyes turning cold and sharp. The air around her began to vibrate with rage. To think someone would dare try to murder students from Kanglan Academy in broad daylight. You have a lot of nerve. I stepped forward and bowed deeply. Thank you for saving us, instructor. I owe you my life. I wasn't exaggerating. If she hadn't shown up at that exact moment, I would have been a corpse. Pei Qiu waved off my gratitude. Save the thanks. You're a student of my academy. Protecting you is my job. She turned her icy gaze back to Lu Ying. Chief Lu, you seem very proud of yourself. Do you really think you're invincible, acting like you can kill my students whenever you please? Invincible? Lu Ying's face went pale. The arrogance he had shown seconds ago vanished, replaced by a frantic, oily smile. Instructor Pei Qiu, please, it's a misunderstanding. I didn't mean to kill them. It's just, Yang Fan and Yang Shui tried to attack my son, Lu Zhe. I acted on impulse. I lost my head. Please, forgive me. He was backpedaling fast. I could see the fear in his eyes. Lu Ying was a level 5 martial master, but Pei Qiu was a level 9. In this world, that gap was an ocean. He knew he couldn't win, so he did what cowards do best. He folded. I watched him with disgust. This man was a shark when facing the weak, but a shivering dog when facing the strong. He was a perfect example of a local tyrant. Pei Qiu wasn't buying his act. She let out a cold, mocking laugh. Lu Ying, I think you need a reminder so you don't forget your place again. Consider this a gift to help your memory. She reached out, and a vibrant, 5-colored spike appeared in her hand. It was the Great Spirit Spike, a high-grade spirit tool. She didn't need a weapon to beat him, but she wanted this to hurt. She wanted to leave a mark he would never forget. Without giving him a chance to prepare, she struck. A tidal wave of spiritual energy exploded from the spike, slamming into Lu Ying's chest. He didn't even have time to scream before he was blasted through the air. He hit the ground hard, coughing up a mouthful of bright red blood. His aura, once suffocating, withered away to almost nothing. The rest of the Lu family stood frozen. Their leader, their strongest pillar, had been broken in a single move. They looked like they were waiting for the executioner's blade. Lu Ying, Pei Qiu said, her voice echoing through the street. This was just a lesson. If you ever touch a member of the Yang family again, I will end you personally. My heart raced. She didn't just say me or Yang Shui. She said the Yang family. She was giving us the one thing we needed most, a shield. She turned to the crowd, her voice growing even louder. From this day forward, whether it's here in Qingyun City or within the Qingyun sect itself, anyone who moves against the Yang family makes an enemy of Kanglan Academy. The surrounding crowd gasped. No one expected the academy to throw its weight behind a fallen family like ours. Yang Shui and I looked at each other, both of us feeling a massive weight lift off our shoulders. With the academy's protection, the Yang family finally had room to breathe. Once the crowds dispersed, Pei Qiu looked at us. With the academy as your backing, the Qingyun sect won't dare move against your family openly. You're safe for now. We won't forget this, instructor, I said, bowing again. Later that day, Yang Shui and I made our way to the Yang family's temporary shelter. When we arrived at the cramped, dilapidated courtyard in a remote corner of the city, my chest tightened. The Yangs were once a noble clan, a name of prestige. Now, they were hiding in a place that barely caught the sunlight. Now that we have the academy's support, we should rebuild, Yang Shui said, her eyes scanning the crumbling walls. We can bring the family back to its former glory. I shook my head slowly. It's not the time to relax, Shui. The Academy is protecting us because they're betting on our potential. If we fail to show results, if we stay weak, they'll drop us the moment we become a liability. We can't rely on others forever. The Yang family has to stand on its own feet. Yang Shui stared at me, her eyes wide with curiosity. I could tell she was wondering when the family failure had grown so cynical and wise. But she didn't argue. She knew I was right. In a world where power was everything, the weak were only tolerated as long as they were useful. As we walked into the courtyard, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was the third elder, Yang Wu. He rushed toward us, his face etched with worry. "Are you two all right? Did anything happen?" I felt a pang of guilt. The news of our protection was spreading through the city, but my family was hiding so deep they hadn't even heard it yet. Inside, I saw the children playing in the dirt while the young men practiced their forms under the strict eye of Elder Yang Zong. They were all working so hard, desperate to restore what we had lost. We sat down with the two elders in the main hall. Yang Wu grabbed my hand, his grip trembling. "Fan, the entrance exam for the academy. Did you pass?" The room went silent. Both elders looked at me with a mix of hope and sheer terror. They knew that if I failed, the last spark of hope for the Yang family would be extinguished. I told them everything: the fight, Pei Chio's intervention, and the fact that I was officially a student of Kanglin Academy. As the words left my mouth, the tension broke. Yang Wu and Yang Zong didn't just smile. They looked like children on a festival day, their faces lighting up with a joy I hadn't seen in years. We weren't just survivors anymore, we were fighting back. Yang Wu couldn't stop smiling. He looked up at the ceiling, his eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "The heavens have eyes," he shouted. "The Yang family will finally see its glory restored." I let out a cold, sharp laugh. If the heavens had eyes, they wouldn't have watched while the Qingyun sect slaughtered our people. If the heavens had eyes, they wouldn't let the strong bully the weak without consequence. The two elders fell silent, their faces pale. The weight of my words hit them hard. Before the silence could get too heavy, Yang Wu reached into his robe and pulled out a white jade pendant. He pressed it into my hand. "Your father gave this to me before he disappeared," Yang Wu whispered. "He told me to keep it safe and give it to you. It's a family heirloom, passed down from leader to leader." He was afraid it would fall into the wrong hands when the sect attacked. I looked down at the pendant. It was pure white, carved with complex, strange patterns that seemed to swirl under the light. I felt a faint chill radiating from the stone, but nothing else. No hidden power, no humming energy. "Our ancestors studied this for generations," Yang Wu continued. "None of them ever discovered its secret. But your father insisted it stayed with the head of the house." I nodded, closing my fingers around the cool jade. If my father valued it this much, it had a purpose. I tucked it away, treating it like the treasure it was. We talked for a while longer, just normal family talk, but eventually, it was time for me to leave. "The Academy's name will keep the Qingyun sect away for now," I told them as I stood up. "You can live normally again. But listen to me, don't go looking for trouble. Leave the family's honor and the search for my father to me. I'll handle it alone." As I walked away, I didn't look back. I knew they were watching my silhouette, feeling a mix of guilt and regret. For 10 years, they had tried to kick me out. Now, I was the only thing standing between them and extinction. I met up with Yang Shui near the ruins of our old home. We headed toward the Kanglin Academy outpost together. When we arrived, I saw a middle-aged man talking to my instructor, Pei Chio. I recognized him immediately. It was Dong Chao, one of the 3 strongest experts in Qingyun City. I slowed my pace as I overheard their conversation. My breath hitched. "The news is spreading fast," Dong Chao told Pei Chio. "An Earth-grade spiritual artifact has appeared north of the city. They say it's a sword." Pei Chio sighed, his expression grave. "An Earth-grade item? That's going to draw in some terrifying people. The southern region is about to become a bloodbath." Dong Chao nodded. "Earth-grade weapons are rare, even in the central lands. Every powerhouse for miles is going to be fighting for that blade." My heart hammered against my ribs. An Earth-grade spirit sword. I was born with a natural sword body. The higher the grade of the sword, the more it could help me evolve. If I could get my hands on that blade, my strength would skyrocket. Even if there was only a 1 in a million chance, I had to try. I couldn't protect the Yang family as I was now. Peichio noticed me and waved me over. Young fan, everything is ready. We're leaving for the academy now. Dong Chao looked me over, his eyes lingering on my steady aura. The rumors were right, he muttered. You have deep potential, kid. You'll be a powerhouse one day. I ignored the compliment and looked straight at Peichio. Instructor, I need to ask for a leave of absence. Leave? Peichio blinked, confused. What for? The Yang family is still in chaos. I lied, keeping my voice steady. I need to settle some family matters before I commit to the academy. Please, give me some time. Yang Shui frowned, stepping toward me. Yang fan, what are you talking about? We just saw the elders. Everything is fine. I looked her in the eyes. This is important. For me and the family. I can't go yet. Peichio looked stressed, as he had already promised the dean he was bringing me back today. Tell me what's wrong. I can handle it for you. Whatever it is, I'll fix it. I shook my head. Thank you, instructor, but this is something I have to do myself. No one else can help me. Peichio and Yang Shui stared at me, their faces turning grim. They clearly thought I was hiding something dangerous. I gave them an apologetic look. I only need a month. Just 1 month. After that, I'll report to the academy on my own. Peichio sighed, realizing I wasn't going to budge. Fine. A month is nothing for a cultivator. Just don't fall behind the other students. He handed me a jade tablet. It was my identity token. My name and status were already carved on the back. Take this. When you arrive at the academy, show it to the guards and they'll bring you to me. I took the token and turned to leave. Be careful. Yang Shui called out. Her voice was soft, laced with a worry she couldn't quite hide. The family can't lose you again. I won't die until I find my father. I promised. I walked away, heading north. Behind me, Peichio was calling for the rest of the group to move out. He summoned a massive, snow-white flying beast that descended from the clouds. I watched from a distance as they soared into the sky, disappearing toward the horizon. I was alone now. The hunt for the Earthgrade sword had begun. While I was out there hunting for the Earthgrade sword, things were heating up back at the Qingyan sect. Inside their grand hall, the atmosphere was thick with ambition. Qingyan, the master alchemist, had already started refining spirit-breaking pills. The sect master, Qingro, looked pleased. With those pills, the sect could churn out powerful warriors like a factory. The Grand Elder, Qing Xian, was even bolder. He claimed that once the pills were finished, the entire southern region would fall under their control. Suddenly, a loud laugh echoed through the hall. It was mocking and full of disdain. The Qingyan sect sure has a big mouth, a voice boomed. Do you really think you're that important? Qingrou's eyes narrowed instantly. She demanded to know who dared to trespass. Before she could even finish her sentence, a black-robed old man materialized in the center of the hall. The elders bristled. Qing Xian, always the hothead, pointed a finger and started screaming about how the sect wasn't to be bullied. He didn't even finish his sentence. A sudden force sent him flying across the room. He hit the wall hard. The hall went dead silent. Nobody had even seen the old man move. Qingrou's face turned grim as she realized the truth. The man was a level 9 martial emperor. Qing Xian's head was spinning. He had just insulted a level 9 martial emperor to his face. In the southern region, Qingrou was considered the ceiling at level 6, but this man was on a completely different level. The old man laughed at their shock. Qingrou, realizing she was outmatched, lowered her posture and bowed respectfully. She asked what business a senior of his stature had with their sect. I'm from Kanglan Academy, the old man said calmly. I'm here on behalf of the Outer Academy Dean to deliver a message. Qingrou frowned. She couldn't understand why the prestigious academy would care about them. The old man didn't mince words. He told her the dean wanted the Qingyun sect to drop their grudge against the Yang family. Why? Because I, Yang Fan, was now a student of Kanglan Academy. He warned them that if they touched the Yang family again, they would be picking a fight with the academy itself. Qingrou was lost. She had been away and had no idea what had happened. She turned to Qing Xian, her voice cold, demanding to know what he had done to the Yang family and who this Yang Fan was. Qing Xian couldn't hide it anymore. He stuttered out the truth. While she was gone, Elder Qing Yin and several disciples had been killed at the Yang residence. Even the genius Nangong Shui had nearly died. He told her I had threatened to wipe out the entire sect. In his righteous anger, he had taken elders to wash the Yang family in blood. Qingrou's face went pale, then red with fury. She didn't care about the details or his excuses. She asked for the final result. Qing Xian admitted they had slaughtered the pillars of the Yang family, but they hadn't finished the job. "You idiot," Qingrou screamed. She called him brainless for attacking without investigating my background. Qing Xian tried to defend himself, acting like a victim, claiming he was just getting revenge for their fallen brothers. He still didn't get it. He thought the Yang family was just a small bug they could crush with a finger. Qingrou was trembling with rage. If I was just a nobody, why would Kanglin Academy send a level 9 martial emperor to protect my family? The black-robed old man was tired of the drama. He gave them one final warning. If he had to come back, he would give the Qingyun sect a lesson they'd never forget. Then, with a flash of light, he vanished. Qingrou turned back to the Grand Elder, her eyes like ice. She asked about the survivors. Qing Xian admitted that while the main forces were dead, the younger generation had escaped, and my father, Yang Kuan, had been rescued by a mysterious masked man. A man who was also a martial emperor. Qingrou fell into a deep silence. 2 martial emperors involved with a small family? Something was very wrong. She strictly ordered that no one was to touch the Yang family again, under threat of death. Qing Xian nodded, but his heart was full of resentment. He thought she was a coward and decided he needed to speak to the old sect master behind her back. Just then, the second elder, Qing Mu, broke the tension. He reported that an Earth-grade sword had appeared in the north of Qingyun City. Every powerhouse in the southern region was already heading there. Qingrou looked toward the north. She knew a storm was coming, and the southern region was about to descend into total chaos. And right in the middle of that storm, I was waiting. Qingrou fell into deep thought for a moment before speaking. She decided that no matter what, we had to go see it for ourselves. On my end, I didn't linger in Qingyun City. I pushed my body to the limit, sprinting toward the north. I was currently a level 10 martial artist. To break through to the martial master realm, I needed to absorb a massive amount of astral energy or find a powerful sword to devour. Relying on astral energy alone would take too long because the energy available in this region was incredibly thin. Unless I could travel into the vast universe itself, I wouldn't find enough. That wasn't an option for me yet. So, I had to eat swords. Being born with the natural sword body gave me a talent others could only dream of. I could swallow spirit swords to raise my cultivation. I actually had a spirit sword on me, but it was a parting gift from Qing Shui. It was a peak earth-grade blade, and I didn't want to destroy it unless I had no other choice. It was the only thing I had to remember her by. As I traveled, the road grew crowded. More and more cultivators were heading north. Most of them flew through the sky on magical artifacts or beams of light. Very few people were traveling on foot like me. An earth-grade spirit tool was a treasure every powerhouse craved. Even if they couldn't win it, they wanted to see it. 10 days later, I entered a massive mountain range. The air was heavy with the pressure of an earth-grade weapon. Every powerful expert in the region was circling this place. Just as I tried to head deeper into the mountains, a young man in blue robes stepped out and blocked my path. He looked me up and down, his eyes narrowing. He asked why he couldn't see through my cultivation despite my young age. He demanded to know if I was hiding a treasure that masked my strength. I stared back at him, my guard up. He was a level 8 martial master. I told him it was none of his business and asked if he was trying to rob me. The greedy look on his face gave him away instantly. I realized then that being unable to see my cultivation level made people suspicious. My black name ring was supposed to hide me, but it was actually attracting trouble. I decided I couldn't rely on it forever. The boy laughed. He told me that since I knew his intentions, I should hand over the treasure immediately. If he had to force me, he said, I would die. I scoffed. He was only a level 8 martial master. While I might not be able to beat him in a fair fight, I wasn't afraid of dying at his hands. I insulted him right back, telling him he thought too highly of himself. His eyes turned cold. A massive saber appeared in his hand. He roared that since I didn't know what was good for me, I could just go to hell. He charged. I gripped my Qinkuan sword, my brow furrowed. He wasn't a weakling. I could feel the terrifying power radiating from his blade. The saber whistled through the air. His technique was fast, like a crashing tide of light. It was dizzying. I didn't panic. I leaped back, narrowly dodging the first strike. But he didn't give me a chance to breathe. He followed up with a storm of attacks, forcing me onto the defensive. I struggled to keep my footing, but I didn't give up. I blocked every strike, slowly finding my rhythm and starting to strike back. Every time I lunged, he brushed my attacks aside with ease. I realized I couldn't win this fight. I swung my sword with everything I had, unleashing a strike that blurred the line between life and death. The moment the sword light flew, I turned and bolted. By the time he blocked the flash, I was already gone. I could feel his rage burning behind me, but I didn't look back. I ran until my lungs burned. I didn't stop until I was sure no one was following me. Only then did I let out a breath. That fight made one thing clear. I was too weak. As a level 10 martial artist, I'd be killed before I even saw the Earth-grade treasure. I pulled out the sword Qing Shui had given me. It was 3 feet long and 2 fingers wide, pulsing with powerful spiritual energy. I didn't want to do this, but I had no choice. If a random level 8 martial master could stop me in my tracks, I stood no chance in the chaos ahead. I found a hidden spot and sat down. Swallowing a sword was something I had never heard of before meeting the woman in my chest. But after the Chinquan sword, I knew how insane my body was. I remembered her instructions and closed my eyes. I slowly pressed the blade into my body. The moment the steel entered my skin, a violent explosion of energy erupted inside me. It surged through my veins like a tidal wave. My cultivation wall shattered instantly. I hit the martial master realm. The energy from the peak Earth-grade sword kept pushing. Level 1, Level 2, Level 3. The power finally settled when I reached Level 3 martial master. I opened my eyes, and a faint glow of sword intent flickered in my pupils. The strength felt incredible. One sword had jumped me 3 levels. If I could get my hands on that Earth-grade treasure, who knew how far I could go? I set my jaw. I had to get that sword. I saw more figures flying overhead and hurried toward the heart of the mountains. 2 days later, I learned from other cultivators that this place was called Chixiao Mountain. A tomb belonging to a martial grandmaster had been discovered and forced open. When I reached the edge of the burial site, the area was packed. I looked around and felt a chill. Martial spirits were everywhere like common dogs. Martial masters covered the hillsides. I counted over a dozen martial lords and 4 martial emperors. One of the figures in the distance felt strangely familiar, though I couldn't place why. The heavy hitters were all here. The storm had finally arrived. I looked at the crowd swarming Chixiao Mountain and felt a heavy weight in my chest. So many experts from the southern region had gathered here for a single Earth-grade spiritual sword. Trying to snatch it from their hands felt like trying to climb to heaven in a single leap. As I scanned the area, a figure blocked my path. It was the blue-robed boy from before. He stared at me, his face twisted in a cruel grin. "Kid, let's see how you escape my grasp this time," he sneered. I couldn't help but let out a dry laugh. "Escape? This time, I think you're the one who should be running." The boy burst into laughter, clutching his sides. "Are you joking? You're just a level 3 martial master. You think I'm afraid of you?" I had taken off my black concealment ring, so my cultivation level was plain to see. I was tired of his talking. "Damn it," I muttered. "Are you new to robbery? You talk way too much." I didn't wait for him to respond. I lunged forward, the Chinquan sword cutting through the air like a streak of lightning. The boy's eyes flashed with disdain. "If you're that eager to die, I'll help you." He swung a massive broadsword to meet my strike. The blades collided with a deafening metallic crash, sparks flying everywhere. The force of the impact sent the boy skidding back dozens of feet, his boots carving furrows in the dirt. I didn't move an inch. His pupils shrank. "How are you?" I didn't let him finish. Another flash of sword light followed. He barely managed to raise his blade to block, but the resulting shockwave sent him flying again. When he hit the ground, he coughed up a mouthful of blood, his face pale with shock. "Why are you so strong?" I frowned, walking toward him. "Still talking? Let me teach you how a real robbery works." I swung the sword again, using a strike that felt like it could decide life or death. The blade tore through the air so sharply it seemed to leave a tiny crack in space itself. The boy began to tremble, pouring all his energy into a desperate defense. The explosion was violent. He sprayed more blood into the air, his defense shattered. As I closed in for the final strike, he tried to dodge, but he was too slow. The Chinkoan's sword pierced straight through his chest. Next life, remember to be quick about it, I whispered. I reached down and snatched the storage ring from his finger. He coughed, blood bubbling from his lips as he stared at me in disbelief. Why? He collapsed, dead before he could finish the question. He never understood how a level 3 martial master could overpower him so easily. I wiped my blade. With my current strength, I could fight anyone below the martial lord realm. But against the true heavyweights, I was still lacking. If I wanted that earth-grade sword, I needed to get stronger fast. I pushed deeper into the mountains. My confidence was higher now. Those 3 levels I gained weren't just a small step. They were a leap. Anyone below the Lord Realm was now fair game. Soon, the crowd grew even thicker. A massive mountain blocked the path, and several powerful figures were at the front, hammering away at a hidden formation. I saw martial lords and even martial emperors assisting. The entrance to the martial grandmaster's tomb had to be right there. Suddenly, a loud boom echoed through the valley. The formation shattered. The crowd surged forward, but the powerful experts at the front stopped them. They huddled together, whispering. Finally, a middle-aged man turned to the crowd. "The tomb is open," he announced. "We need 10 volunteers to go in first and scout for treasure. Whatever you find, we won't ask for a share. Who wants to go?" Silence fell over the clearing. Nobody was stupid. They weren't asking for treasure hunters. They were looking for cannon fodder to trigger the traps. The man's face darkened when no one stepped forward. Even a martial emperor didn't want to walk blindly into a grandmaster's tomb. "Since no one is speaking," he growled, "I'll just have to pick." In a blur of motion, he vanished. He reappeared in the crowd, grabbing cultivators by the neck and tossing them like rag dolls into the dark entrance. He had already thrown 7 or 8 people when he turned his gaze toward me. I tried to bolt, but against a martial emperor, I was helpless. Before I could take a single step, his hand clamped onto me. He threw me toward the gaping maw of the tomb. In that moment, I felt a crushing sense of insignificance. Without power, I was nothing but a pawn. My father's life and the honor of the Yang family rested on my shoulders. I couldn't die here. Just as I was about to vanish into the darkness, I felt a pair of arms catch me midair. We landed softly on the ground. I looked up, stunned. "It's you?" The person standing before me wore a white robe. It looked familiar because it was mine. It was the robe I had given to Qing Shui when we parted ways. Even though she was dressed like a man, I recognized her immediately. The way the robe fit her, those eyes, that cold but beautiful face. I could never forget her. I felt a rush of excitement. I hadn't expected to see her again so soon. "You came too," I said, a smile breaking across my face. But Qing Shui didn't smile back. Her expression was icy, more distant than I had ever seen it. "This isn't a place for you," she said, her voice devoid of emotion. "Leave. Now." Her coldness stung. It was like she was a completely different person. "And why shouldn't I be here?" I asked, my voice turning sharp. "Is this place only reserved for the strong? Are the rest of us not allowed to even try?" She bit her lip, looking at me with eyes that seemed frozen over. Seeing Qing Shui stand there as a high and mighty martial emperor felt like a needle stabbing my heart. The woman before me was a complete stranger compared to the one I had cared for when she was wounded and vulnerable. Back then, she needed me. Now, she looked down on everyone. Even though her power was the same, her attitude toward me had flipped entirely. Qing Shui seemed to notice the heavy stares from the crowd. She turned to the middle-aged man leading the group. "Patriarch Sikong, I have a history with this man. Find someone else to test the path." Patriarch Sikong gave a slow, measured nod. "Very well. If that is the case, I'll stretch my own muscles." Without another word, he reached out and grabbed a different cultivator, a mere martial master, and tossed him into the dark maw of the tomb like a piece of trash. I watched Sikong closely. This had to be Sikong Bo, head of one of the 4 great families of the southern region. Rumor had it his strength was at the level of a level 3 martial emperor. In this part of the world, very few people could stand against him. Another man in purple robes stepped forward, his voice impatient. "Time is wasting. Let's move." That was Gu Chuan, the head of the Gu family. He was even stronger, a level 5 martial emperor. Gu Chuan is right, a third man added, nodding. A martial ancestor's tomb is bound to have incredible treasures. Let's stop stalling. That was Chao Ming, the level 3 martial emperor leading the Chao family. I looked at these 3 powerhouses and frowned. These were the famous 4 families, but someone was missing. I scanned the area, searching for any sign of the Nangong family, but they were nowhere to be found. Since we're all in agreement, let's go, Qing Shui said. Then, she leaned in and whispered to me, her voice low and sharp. Stay close to me. Do not wander off once we are inside. I opened my mouth to argue, but the look in her eyes stopped me cold. It was non-negotiable. Suddenly, the leaders surged forward, their spiritual energy erupting like rainbows as they flew into the tomb. Qing Shui didn't give me a choice. She grabbed me and pulled me along. The inside of the tomb was massive beyond belief. It wasn't just a cave. It was an underground city filled with winding paths, grand halls, and ornate pavilions. The lower-level cultivators who had rushed in earlier were already looting the side chambers, their faces lit up with greed as they filled their bags. The 4 leaders ignored the small stuff. They flew deeper, guided by their own senses. After a while, they came to a halt in front of a magnificent structure. A plaque hung above the entrance with 3 bold characters, Hall of Inheritance. The air shifted the moment we stepped inside. A heavy, suffocating pressure washed over us, making my heart hammer against my ribs. Danger! Qing Shui shouted, her voice echoing. The 3 patriarchs felt it too. We huddled together, forming a tight circle. Suddenly, a massive stone statue at the front of the hall began to tremble. The entire building shook violently as a terrifying aura radiated from the stone. Everyone tensed up, spiritual energy flickering in their hands as they prepared for the worst. Then, a wisp of green smoke drifted out from the statue, swirling and thickening until it transformed into an old man in green robes with hair as white as snow. My blood ran cold. Great, a ghost, I thought. Just my luck. Run as soon as you see an opening. Qing Shui's voice rang out in my head. I looked at the old man, trying to gauge his strength, and my jaw nearly hit the floor. This old guy was a level 9 martial ancestor. The gap between us was like a puddle compared to the ocean. You dare disturb my sleep, the old man said, his voice dripping with malice. You deserve death. He flicked his finger. A streak of green sword light tore through the air, heading straight for us. My eyes widened. He was a sword cultivator, the first one I had seen besides the mysterious woman in my chest. Qing Shui jumped in front of me, thrusting her sword forward to meet the attack. The 3 patriarchs joined her, unleashing their full power at the incoming light. Boom! The collision was deafening. The sword light exploded, and all 4 martial emperors were sent flying backward. They hit the ground hard, coughing up blood, their faces turning a deathly pale. I stood there, completely untouched. Everyone looked at me in confusion, but there was no time for questions. Qing Shui looked relieved to see I was okay, but the situation was grim. Sikong Bo scrambled to his feet, bowing deeply. Senior, please forgive us. We didn't mean to intrude. We will leave right now. The old man let out a cold snort. You think you can just leave because you said sorry? You think I don't exist? Gu Chuan tried to plead next. Senior, we truly didn't know you were resting here. If we had known, we never would have stepped foot inside. These powerful patriarchs were throwing away their pride. They knew they couldn't take even one more hit from this man. I don't care if it was an accident or not, the old man sneered. Since you're here, you can stay and sleep with me forever. The color drained from everyone's faces. Qing Shui turned to me again, her voice a desperate whisper. I'll hold him back. You run. Now. Running is a fantasy, the old man laughed. He turned his gaze toward me, his eyes narrowing. A level 3 martial master thinks he can escape me? You have a death wish, boy. Qing Shui bowed again, her voice trembling slightly. Senior, please. He's just a boy. Let him go. Are you trying to bargain with me? The old man snapped. The pressure in the room spiked. He released a wave of raw power directed solely at Qing Shui. She tried to fight back, her spiritual energy flaring, but a level 6 martial emperor stood no chance against a level 9 martial ancestor. Within seconds, she collapsed, blood spilling from her lips. Seeing her fall, I felt a surge of fury. I turned to the three patriarchs who were standing there, paralyzed by fear. "Are you idiots?" I roared. "Don't you understand? If she dies, none of us are getting out of here alive." The three patriarchs glared at me, their faces turning a sickly shade of green. To them, I was just a lowly level 3 martial master. I was a bug, and bugs weren't supposed to talk back to powerhouses. But Gu Chuan broke the silence. He admitted I was right. If Qing Shui fell, they were next. They had to fight together or die alone. Chao Ming didn't wait for a second invitation. He leaped into the fray first. The crushing pressure on Qing Shui finally eased up as he joined the struggle. Then Sikong Bo and Gu Chuan followed. For martial emperors were finally standing as one against the old monster. The green-robed man snarled, his face twisting into something demonic. He called us ants. Then, a long sword appeared in his hand. The moment it manifested, the entire hall began to tremble violently. I stared, my heart hammering against my ribs. It was a first-rank spirit sword. Qing Shui's face was grim. She shouted for them to stop holding back or none of us would leave this place alive. The patriarchs exchanged quick looks. They knew the truth now. This old man was terrifying, but he was just a remnant soul. He couldn't use his full strength. If he were whole, we would have been dust in a single breath. Gu Chuan roared for everyone to stop hiding their trump cards. We had to finish the old man first and worry about the rest later. I watched them, my mind racing. Qing's sect master. Was Qing Shui actually the leader of a sect? The air in the hall grew thick with killing intent. Qing Shui glanced at me and told me to get back. She didn't want me caught in the shockwaves of the battle. I didn't argue. I retreated to a far corner of the hall, keeping my eyes peeled. These were top-tier experts. One stray hit would turn me into a red mist. The old man looked worried now. His expression darkened. He was a fading ghost, and he knew it. If the fight dragged on, he would dissipate into nothingness. Qing Shui saw his weakness clearly. She told the others not to trade lives, just to stall him. Time was our only ally. The old man knew he was running out of it. He gripped his sword and swung it in a massive horizontal arc. A sharp wave of sword chi tore through the air toward the four of them. They didn't flinch. Each of them pulled out their high-grade earth-rank spiritual tools and met the blow head-on. The collision was deafening. The explosion of energy sent all four of them skidding back, but the old man was pushed back too. They all let out a collective breath of relief. If he had been in his prime, that one swing would have ended it. The old man was livid. He roared in fury, unable to believe a few martial emperors were pushing him to the brink. He screamed that he would bury us all here and charged again. While the chaos erupted in the center of the room, my eyes drifted to the side of the hall. There was a small pond tucked away in the shadows. Inside the water, a single, glowing flower swayed gently. My breath hitched. It was the Heavenly Tao flower. Legends said the Heavenly Tao planted these flowers personally. They could bring the dead back to life. They could make a cultivator's power skyrocket in an instant. I crept toward it, the scent hitting me like a physical wave. It was sweet and intoxicating. Just breathing it in made my inner energy pulse with excitement. I realized the truth. The old man wasn't just guarding this place. He was waiting for this flower to bloom so he could resurrect himself. I looked at the fighting, then back at the flower. Was the legend true? Could a dead man really live again? I didn't wait to find out. I reached down, grabbed the stem, and ripped the Heavenly Tao flower out by its roots.